From European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sent his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. We were just talking about the astronauts. The astronauts coming back to Earth, having been up there for 9 months, right? Imagine if they'd been away for 9 years and they came back to Britain. And that would mean that they'd gone in something like, 2016, just as the referendum for the European Union happened, and they came back 9 years later, having not seen any news at all, and they'd go, who the hell's this bloke Keir Starmer? What's he doing? Why is he the Prime Minister? What happened to Boris Johnson? What happened to, Theresa May? What happened to the Tories? Luckily, I've got Bob Seeley here with me this morning. Very good morning to you, Bob. There's something to be said for time capsules, I've always thought, not necessarily in a good way, but these astronauts finally rescued by Elon Musk, a very smart man who all lefties think is a complete and utter maniac, possibly a Nazi, and should be shot. Unfortunately for you guys, he's actually quite smart. He set a rocket up to get these guys back, and we'll be talking about that amongst many, many other stories this morning. We've got D-Day, it says on the Guardian front page, for disability benefits. I think it's a bit insulting to the D-Day veterans and the D-Day families to actually try and make out that this is like D-Day. It's nothing like D-Day, OK? So don't even use that phrase. I'm not going to use it. I think it's disgusting. We're going to be talking about the cost of the benefits burden. That's being written about in The Sun this morning. We're going to talk about the cost, of course, of the £40 billion tax raid, which is killing growth. That's on the front page of the Daily Express. And also, we'll be talking about Kemi Badenoch, who's finally woken up out of her torpor for the last, 9 months, and said, let's get rid of the net zero targets. It's going to be impossible to hit them by 2050. Well, thank you very much indeed, and welcome to the common sense fight, because in the end, we know that net zero is an absolute crock of nonsense, and in the end, we also know that it is never going to be achievable. And even if you wanted to achieve it, nobody can answer my question, which is always, what happens if we do hit those targets? Will we suddenly be better off? Will we suddenly be breathing cleaner air? No, of course we won't. Also, we'll be talking about civil servants and their spending sprees. Quango madness, apparently. The Sun's got a good campaign now going after all the waste in government. We're going to be looking at why Mad Ed Miliband has gone to China and what exactly he's doing there. And also, of course, potholes. one of the biggest problems for all people in this country. It's being suggested now that it could take as many as 12 years to actually fix all the pothole problems. We'll continue with our conversation that we started last week about the state of the nation, how Britain is now the litter capital of the world, and also from yesterday, what on earth is going on with council tax, what on earth is going on with that Motability story. All of that still to come right here on Morning Glory. It's 5 minutes past 6. Let's get it on. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. Jürgen Meyer's back in the news. You know, Jürgen from GB Energy. Apparently, they've had a meeting. It's the first time they've done anything at all. We'll come back to that as well. Bob Seeley's here. Bob, very good morning to you.
Good morning. 9 billion, they've had a meeting. Let's be grateful.
Yeah, isn't it great? I mean, I'm amazed he's found somebody to have a meeting with.
That's very good
He's
of him.
the only employee of actually GB Energy. They don't seem to have a website. They've got no office. He doesn't seem to have any kind of
I've had
agenda.
a meeting. Can I have 9 billion? Please?
Yeah, can I have 9 billion?
I must try it sometime.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Should we just kick off with that? Let's do it. It's good. Jürgen has a meeting. Here's a piece of news for you.
I'm Jürgen Meyer, Chair of Great British Energy, and welcome to your energy company. Great British Energy stems from one very simple idea, that British people should have a right to own and benefit from our own natural energy resources. This is why Great British Energy is 100% owned by the British people, for the British people. We are proudly based in Aberdeen, a world-class centre of energy expertise. Our goal is to help communities and bill payers reap the benefits of clean, secure, homegrown energy. Developing and investing in a range of energy generation projects and technologies across the country. We will be growing domestic supply chains and through that supporting thousands of new, exciting, high-paid jobs. Our journey to energy security, clean power and net zero is truly on path, and we at Great British Energy are here to accelerate that exciting journey.
On path. It's like Hans Christian Meyer, isn't it? You know, let's have a few fairy tales.
Is he German or is he Geordie?
Well,
I can't.
I'm not sure.
Is he
Apparently,
Northern?
he used to be in charge of Siemens, right? So you'd think, a German company, you would think he'd be quite a clever guy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he may well be.
Yep.
But he's filmed that in London. They're not in Aberdeen.
Pretending
he's got no
he's in
office.
Aberdeen.
He's pretending he's in Aberdeen. They've got lots of pictures of Aberdeen. Yeah. You know, I've been to Aberdeen. It's a fine city, full of oil people, right? Yeah. People who make money out of the oil and gas business. They're not very happy with Jürgen.
I think for me the worst thing is this guy is pretending or presenting himself. I'm sure he's a good guy himself. He's presenting this thing as some kind of great patriotic endeavour.
Yeah.
Basically, he says our own energy resources, as long as it's not oil, as long as it's not gas, as long as it's not fracking.
Yeah.
I don't even know if nuclear comes into it. Basically, as long as it's wind.
Right.
And I'm sorry, it's a massive and dishonest lie.
Isn't it?
And Ed Miliband is a Marxist fool of the first order.
Yeah.
They are not. And again, the other lie is there's endless cheap, endless highly paid jobs, and energy is going to be cheap.
Yeah.
You can't have both.
Right.
You either have cheap energy, or you have lots of jobs subsidising.
And also, he
green
makes
energy.
it sound as though GB Energy is an energy company, which it isn't. They don't buy energy. They don't sell energy. They don't have any energy.
No.
What are they for? It's like a massive con. It's like I sort of I said this before. He's like the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. You know, he's behind the curtain. You know, doing all that, going. You know, I am the great and wonderful Jürgen Meyer of GB Energy. Yeah. And you actually no, you're not. Let's pull the curtain back.
It's a bloke in an office.
Yeah, Toto, get over there and pull the curtain back. And oh look, it's just a bloke from Germany.
Okay, by the next election, Kemi and other parties as well maybe. I think that there is going to be people willing to blow the gaff on net zero. Thank God, not before time. It is a con and in a profoundly damaging and dishonest one.
It really is. Luckily, we'll talk about what's on the front page of the Mail. Kemi saying net zero is impossible by 2050. Finally, a politician actually admitting that this idea of net zero is a nonsense, a complete shibboleth.
She has always been sceptical. It's great that she's now coming out and saying this.
Yeah, it is. Now, how about this? Page 2 of The Sun. I've got pictures of Ed Miliband, right, pursuing his net zero message in China, meeting Vice Premier Ding Xiaojing in Beijing yesterday. He's urging them to address the climate emergency. I mean, why? What's it got to do with him? And China is just going, yeah, okay, whatever.
You know, they're, in order to sell us slave labour produced solar panels, they are building 2 coal-fired power stations a week.
I bet.
It is just a
They're
phenomenal
good at it as well.
And we are now becoming more and more dependent on those people for our intermittent green energy. Now, I'm not saying, you know, am I in favour of coal and gas? No, not per se. But if we have the most expensive energy prices in the world by a considerable margin, all it is doing is putting people out of work here. And we're offshoring to China that then produces more pollution to sell us back the goods that we don't want to make anymore, our politicians don't want to make anymore, Ed Miliband doesn't want us to make anymore, and Labour don't want us to make anymore, to make themselves feel better. We should be onshoring this because we will produce it at less pollution than the Chinese.
But also, you say, you know, you're not in favour of gas, you're not in favour of oil, but actually I am in favour of it because, you know, gas boilers, for example, are some of the most efficient ways to heat your home. This is all about, you know, what I call, you know, progression. There was a time when we rode around on horses. There was a time when we didn't have electricity. There was a time when we didn't know how to produce our own coal. You know, I've lived in a house where we had a coal. I discovered a coal bunker. I burned coal in a fireplace. It was brilliant.
No, okay. The point I'm trying to make is that we have to, you know, become greener. We all know that, but there's an intelligent way of doing it and a suicidally daft way of doing it. So yes,
but do we though? But well, how about we ask the actual question? Do we really have to be greener? Do we really have to be greener? Because I fear that we're being driven by these mad zealots who have failed to convince me, certainly, that the world is going to end. Right.
Ed Miliband I just think is a fool of the first order. That doesn't mean that looking after the world is a duff idea. So there is a happy medium.
I get that.
There's a happy medium when we become cleaner in our energy supply. I mean, I was talking to an expert a couple of weeks ago that we could commit to building nuclear and effectively going nuclear across our energy industry in the next 30 years. Right. And in doing so, we'd have consistent pricing. We'd bring down the cost of nuclear because effectively you've got 1 or 2 standard designs. Yeah. You'd go net zero over the course of the next 40, 50 years in a way that's good for industry, in a way that actually is good for British science because we'd be building these nuclear reactors and wouldn't be intermittent, so you wouldn't have to rebuild your infrastructure network. Right. So there is an intelligent way of doing things.
And you would stop punishing people for not going in that direction, right? Because my worry is that it's driven by politics, it's driven by ideology. You know, look at, for example, all of the companies that have gone the wrong way. BP, only last month, have reversed exactly what they were doing because they made a massive error and said, we're not going to go for oil and gas anymore.
The obsession with doing it by this time scale and the amount of, I mean, a quarter of your bill now is green subsidies to pay for all the so-called cheap energy.
That's my point.
Which is not cheap. Right. No, I quite agree. But it doesn't mean being better to the environment or kinder to the environment is a bad thing. It is being done badly at the moment, and we have to work out a more intelligent way of doing it. That's also my point.
I mean, are you convinced? Because I'm not. And that doesn't make me some kind of, you know, a Neanderthal who doesn't believe in science. But what I'm saying is I'm not convinced yet by the argument that whatever we do is going to change anything at all. You know, I see volcanoes going off. I see, you know, massive forest fires happening in California and brush fires, you know, which send massive amounts of carbon into the sky. And yet the world continues to turn. And, you know, and what we do as people is relatively insignificant, isn't it?
Am I a scientist? No. All these scientists say that there is global warming and it's human-made. I accept that for the moment, unless somebody can produce some science otherwise. However, that's not the point. The point is how you achieve it. And at the moment, we're doing it or trying to do it in an obsessive way that most people don't buy into, well, people who don't just listen to the propaganda, and which is very damaging for us. There is a better way of being greener. Do I think we need to look after the world better than we have done? Probably.
Yeah, but we already do.
I do.
I mean, when you consider what it was like, for example, even when I grew up, I'm a bit older than you, you know, when we used to walk through the streets of London and they were thick with smog and fog because we used to have coal.
Back in the 50s.
Yeah, well, it was the 60s.
That was before you.
I'm not quite that old.
No.
I mean, please, come on. But, you know, the point is that, you know, yes, the pollution was awful, and you would go. We used to go to Scotland every year, Ferry Bridge. Be huge plumes of smoke coming out of these incredible sort of furnaces and all of that, and we've made that better. But I don't know, for example, whether any of that is making a hell of any difference whatsoever to the Earth, which is billions of years old and is quite good at looking after itself.
Okay, so you're saying that actually humans are doing it better than government?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I think so.
I think there's a lot to say in that argument. I do think there's ways that government can give it a push. So, for example, when it comes to nuclear, these are... Look, the cheapest form of energy is coal.
Yeah.
But if we continued using coal, I do think it would come at a cost to the environment. Now, that doesn't stop places like India and China doing it.
Or Poland, or Germany.
Well, yeah, but they're... Okay,
Germany have gone back to coal.
Germany's a typical example of a country that has done it phenomenally badly, that talks about green energy, but they're so obsessive, or the green left in Germany is so obsessive that they forced Merkel, who was a dreadful leader...
She was.
To shut down, I think they had 17 nuclear power stations, which produced, I can't remember, a quarter or a third of their energy a lot. And because they've shut that down, because of the anti-nuclear zealots, going back to the Cold War, what they've now done is they become even more reliant on the 35 or so coal-fired power stations that they have, that are actually using brown coal, lignite coal, the most polluting form of coal. So do I think that's a good thing? No, I think it's a very bad thing. They should have kept on with the nuclear. They should have built more nuclear because it is consistent, because you don't have to rebuild your grid, because effectively nuclear is very safe, despite all the naysayers and doom-mongers.
I mean, they talk about 3 Mile Island. That was in the 1970s. It was a long time ago.
And what's that place in Japan where nobody died? And Fukushima, sorry, I don't want to pronounce it.
I know, it's hard to say at this time of the morning. Difficult to say, but I quite like saying it in case I mess it up.
Fukushima.
Yeah, same to you. What about Kemi Badenoch? Is this going to change things? Because, there was a poll that came out yesterday from JL Partners, which said if you asked every constituency, I think it was just in England and Wales, 355 of them went for Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. Something like 300 went for Keir Starmer. Only 6 went for Kemi Badenoch.
Okay, sorry. Kemi, I think Kemi's going to be a great leader, and I think she is being a strong leader at the moment. Some people, fair enough, are not willing to listen to the Conservatives yet. We've just got to accept that. There's going to be a sense of time and forgiveness here. I think what she is doing is making sure that when people do start thinking about politics again, they're actually going to see that we're producing ideas, substantive ideas. You look at some of the stuff that Nigel Farage comes out, and I don't want to say it's slagging off reform, but just some of the policy ideas, just as you know yourself, Mike, they just don't stack up. Okay?
Well, like what, though? Tell me.
I mean, the stuff that he was saying about net zero, they're calling for even more subsidies. And hold on, I just thought the point of actually changing net zero is to reduce the subsidy culture.
Totally.
And to find a better way of doing it. Well, go and read their net zero plans. They're incoherent. They are not coherent.
Okay.
And so if you...
They would say, I guess, that we're going to make them more coherent over time.
Okay, well then why more government subsidies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I didn't know that.
I think what Kemi is trying to do is get us into a better position when it comes to net zero, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to these really significant issues. I understand that people are angry. I myself, I'm actually furious about what's happening to my country, and I feel let down by the last government.
But I mean,
I was in Parliament supporting
I
it.
read a story the other day in which they said they're going to row back a little bit on the hybrid cars, definition, so that by 2030 they won't be illegal. But in the same breath, it said that petrol cars and diesel cars will be illegal to drive around.
We're talking about Labour now, aren't we?
We're talking about just anything.
Okay,
well, the Tories have the same rule, but basically, I mean, it shouldn't be illegal to drive around in a car that's fueled by petrol.
No, look,
I think the hell is going on?
But between Labour and the Conservatives, you're going to see some very sort of clear blue water now when it comes to woke stuff, when it comes to net zero, when it comes to the economy.
It's the only way that the Tories are going to get back into power.
Completely. I get that, and we've got to. And I hope that people understand that whether they like Nigel or not, or like Rupert Lowe, and I've got a lot of time for a lot of what Rupert Lowe says. I think he's absolutely spot on. I think this is very.
Well, he's out on his own now because we had Richard Tyson here yesterday. He's not coming back, I don't think.
I think that's a shame. I mean, I think that Rupert Lowe was the best thing that happened to reform, and I hope that actually we can get him on side for ourselves, because I think he's a significant parliamentarian.
Well, I spent last week asking several Conservative MPs, would you welcome Rupert Lowe into the party, and none of them would. because they were very non-committal, shall we say.
Well, I think that's true.
They didn't say they wouldn't, but they wouldn't say they would either.
And these are sensible Conservative. Which side of the Conservative?
Well, I mean, I only talk to sensible people. I mean, I wouldn't have any nutters on, for heaven's sake. I mean, otherwise, you know, why would you...
I feel reassured.
Yeah,
I feel reassured.
Seriously, yeah, absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from James on Jurgen.
Good morning, Mike. Now, I've got a message for this Jurgen, the Hergen, whatever he's called. Drill, baby, drill. Cheers, Mike. Have a great day.
Yeah, Jurgen Meyer, what a guy. We'll do more on him in a minute. We've got much more to talk about, of course. Skill absence levels up 67% since 2020. There's a new report out. We'll talk a bit about what's going on with the reform, supposedly, of the welfare business. That's all happening today with Liz Kendall. Bob Seeley's here, former Tory MP from the Isle of Wight. This is Morning Glory. Back after this.
Go slightly further, I think, Kevin. I would say that anyone who entered the country illegally should not be allowed to apply for asylum. They should be detained and then they should be deported. There should be no room for decriminalising the criminal activity of crossing our borders without our permission. It's as simple as that. And the notion that, I mean, the Labour Party don't even call them illegal migrants. They call them irregular migrants. You know...
If only they were, Ben. They're very, very regular.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 23 minutes past 6. Bob Seeley's here, former Tory MP from the Isle of Wight. You're getting a bit of stick on Twitter saying it's all very well for Bob Seeley to bang on about what we should be doing. He was in power for 14 years. What did you do? Well, you know, and I've got to ask you that question because that's always the question that Tories get asked. You know, whenever I get them on, whenever I get them on College Green, whether they're shadow ministers now, shadow members of the shadow cabinet. you know, you've got a lot to answer for, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the tweet now. Some might say it's all right for Seeley to criticise net zero. Look, OK, firstly, I came in 2017, by way of fact.
OK.
And secondly, maybe there was a reason I was never in government.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, I always consider you to be one of the more sensible
Thank
MPs.
you very much.
Seriously, I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here.
No, look, when Rishi came in... OK, Boris, just in a nutshell... Everyone thought that people kept voting for people to change the system, and they thought Boris was going to.
Right.
He embraced high immigration, which he shouldn't have done, and net zero, both of which proved to be mistakes. COVID, and I know I don't want to go back to Brexit and COVID, but the political system was dominated by...
COVID was a massive,
a massive
impact,
thing.
wasn't it?
The massive error that we made is that when Rishi came in after Liz messed up, we had a period where we could have reset, and we did not. And to that extent... it was a mistake that we are going to be living with for years to come.
But when you say that you were telling them that it was a mistake, I mean, did they not listen? Did they not? Were they not interested?
No, there was a bunch of us, and it was people. Some of the people were shouting louder than I am. So you go into meetings with a certain Secretary of States who are very happy and glad to be in their jobs. And I remember my Red Wall colleagues saying, you know, take immigration seriously. And there were people who were talking the talk,
and did they just
but they weren't walking the walk. Well, look, we did bring immigration down very sharply in the last year after basically massively dropping the ball.
But that was just
losing.
But that was the
of it.
legal migration, though. That was the stuff where you went, OK, you can't bring your families with you anymore.
Great point. Great point. Nobody was willing at that time, or the people who ran the party at that time were not willing to embrace ECHR reform. But it's not just about ECHR. So when Kemi now says it's not just about ECHR pulling out the human rights, she's right. Because if you do that and don't do anything with the Human Rights Act in the UK or the Equalities Act, these are all part of a matrix of control.
I mean, what's happening now, though, is Starmer is appearing to be, anyway, to me, even more sort of centre-right perhaps than Rishi Sunak was, and I know that might be again performative, but he's building up defences. He's talking about leaving the ECHR. He's talking about a lot of things which the Tories should have done.
If he ever leaves the ECHR, I will go away and become a hermit.
Okay,
really, I mean, I will go and live in a cave.
Right,
it's never ever going to happen, and the performative stuff is just that. It is performative, and I know some of his advisors, the McSweeneys of this world, will love it. He puts on a uniform. He could have been a soldier. He's putting on a uniform. Yeah, it's another CV.
He would never have been a good soldier.
It's another CV.
Right, all right. Well, what about the welfare reforms? They're talking about welfare reform, right? Yep. Today, Liz Kendall's going to get up in Parliament. He's going to announce, according to some on the left of the party, the Diane Abbott's of this world, something which is very un-Labour-like, to say, basically, you're not disabled enough, we're going to take your money off you.
Again, look, I'll say it when I believe it. Like Melstride, in the last year of the Tory government, Melstride brought in these big reforms. They were going to make a difference. In my opinion, they were probably not going to make enough of a difference. So in my opinion, before you do anything, if we ever get back into power, people trust us again. Look, we've got to get rid of this dreadful Labour government. But any sensible government of whatever makeup, the first thing they're going to have to do, and I hope that Kemi will basically say, if you don't sign up to this, you ain't standing as a Tory, you have got to be willing to scrap large parts of the Human Rights Act, which, frankly, has not done anything for the human rights of most people.
But hang on, you're asking the things that could have been done under Tory rule, which weren't done.
They weren't. They weren't, and we were wrong not to do it.
I mean, if you couldn't convince your own party to do it, how are you going to convince anybody else to do it?
Because I think we've got new leadership, and I think Kemi's more of a Conservative than some of our previous leaders, and she understands what has to be done. When you step back from power, being outside Parliament, it makes a big difference to how you see the world, because you're caught up in all those events inside Parliament, and when you get outside Parliament, you realise that you see much more clearly how fed up people are with what's happening in our country.
But there are people listening to this now and watching this show who will say, well, we didn't misunderstand what was going on. We always knew, and we always told you, and we told you what you should have done. I mean, I sat here for years telling you what you should do, and nobody did it.
You're right. What do you want me to do? You want me to say, do you want me to sound like a mealy-mouthed politician and defend the last... OK,
no, I'm not. We're just having a conversation.
I'm just saying, what I'm saying is, I agree, people were saying it at the time, and most of the people were saying it were people who've now lost their seats, not because they were in southern areas like me, but because they were in first-time places. And actually, a lot of those MPs, the Jonathan Gullises, the Miriam Cates of the world, they were the best thing that's happened politically to those communities for decades, because they were taken advantage of by Labour. And when they had a good new Tory MP, and unfortunately, our centre somewhat let them down, to put it mildly, shall we say. But the people...
And now you got Rishi Sunak giving interviews saying, I should never probably have done that. I should never have said stop the budget. It's like, what are you thinking? Why are you now saying it? Now that you're out of office, why are you suddenly going, oh, I didn't realise I was being such a useless, absolute...
Okay, there is nothing worse for me than reading a politician saying, in my time in power, I should have done this.
Yeah.
Because like you, I think, why didn't you?
Right. And
Okay.
because it wasn't for shortages of information. I mean, he could have listened to this show every morning, and I could, people say to me, "Oh, all you do is have a go at Labour." Well, guess what? All I used to do was have a go at the Tories as well, because they were bloody useless.
Yeah, I remember. I was actually scared to go on your show because all you do would blame me for all the sins of the party. And look, I'm not a minister, but I know that sounds like shoulder sloping. I'm just trying to tell you what it was like. That for those of us who were Conservative, who were increasingly concerned about the direction, we weren't getting it. And look, to be fair,
no, but listen, you did come on, and I give you credit for that. Now we've got the same problem with Labour. They don't come on now either.
Let me just, I will defend Rishi and that crowd, or that element of the party. Jeremy Hunt showed that actually being Chancellor, it takes some skill and some balancing. Because we had a fast-growing economy, and now the Labour Party have driven it into the ground.
Rachel Reeves is the worst thing that's ever happened to this country.
We had competent people running it. They just didn't get the immigration stuff as much as they should have done, and they didn't get woke as much as they should have done. And we had that 2-year period where if Rishi come in and said, we're going to do this on human rights, this on the Equality Act, and this on ECHR, we might still have lost, but we wouldn't be down to 120.
No, I think people didn't know how bad this government would be, and I count myself in that as well.
And give Jeremy Hunt, who's not necessarily my favourite Conservative, but he's a good guy.
He's dull, he's boring.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
He's like an accountant. You want a dull and boring accountant. You don't want some guy that jumps out of a hat.
I mean, he's a bit more sort of one-nation-y than I am. But Jeremy showed that actually being Chancellor takes skill and brains, and he actually did a very good job in difficult circumstances, and we see how well they were doing, because actually a year ago we had a growing economy.
Well, the economy in June of last year was in pretty good shape.
It was the fastest growing economy in the G7.
She's completely trashed it.
She has.
Right.
And that's the problem. And if you had still had Hunt in now, he would have been, doing stuff at the fringes and at the edges when it makes a difference. He wouldn't have loaded costs on business. He would have been trying to bring taxes down for people. So on the economy and on education, there was a big difference. And again, look, what they're doing on education now, you've even got neutral people in the education world, like the former head of Ofsted, who are basically saying Labour are now undoing all the good work of recent
Bridget
decades.
Phillips is another complete dud.
Absolutely useless. So when people...
But dangerously useless as well, because driven by this mad ideology of Marxism, effectively.
Absolutely. And so when people... I think the problem is for us, because of immigration and because a bit of woke, people are not willing to say, actually, they did OK on the economy, and they did OK on education, and actually they handled Brexit, pretty well under the circumstances. People are just not willing to listen to the good stuff that happened, because people are still fed up with two key issues. And for your listenership, that is primarily immigration, I feel your pain, and on woke stuff. And again, because people were unwilling to tackle it.
Well, how about this, right? At the weekend, lots of pieces written, and a couple of pieces in the Sunday Times about, Dominic Cummings and Nigel Farage having conversations. Also, word that there is a sort of Tory rebellion going on from the inside. Well, there's always a Tory rebellion, isn't there? There's always something going on. But to remove Kemi and to replace her with somebody else, whether it's Robert Jenrick, whether it's Nigel Farage, you don't buy it?
No, I don't. And because it's always backroom people. These are sort of advisors from nowhere.
Right.
And it's always got Dominic Cummings in the story. And I'm sorry, I just... no.
He's a weirdo, isn't he?
I don't buy it. I really don't. And actually,
he's like one of these guys. He's like Rory Stewart, isn't he? They're in the same category where they walk around going, do you know what? I'm sorry, you've never even met me. I'm Dominic Cummings. I'm a genius.
Yeah.
And you go, are you really? Why?
I mean, Rory, I had a Jesus complex at the end. I'm sorry.
I know, Rory Stewart. I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday who was sort of hooked up with the armed forces and stuff. I said, does anybody remember what he did? Because he talks about, having been in Afghanistan and, sort of striding the earth and some kind of,
Rory he did a short-term commission in between leaving school and university.
Yeah.
That's not knocking it, but, he was not a soldier for many years.
Right.
And then he basically was a semi-diplomat running a little bit of Iraq.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he was an OK guy. I think the problem is with Rory, I just felt he always thought it was a bit of a game, and I just thought he had this slight Etonian complex about things. It's all a terribly fun game.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking, mate, it's a bit more serious.
Isn't it super? Let's go and interview the guy who's a former Al-Qaeda representative who's now running Syria and do a podcast with him. And you kind of go... that's not really the greatest idea you've ever had.
No, it isn't. It isn't. So, but look, I accept what you say, but I just think we did do some good stuff, but people are not willing to listen to that because we dropped the ball on two massive key issues.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what Kemi, bless her, is trying to turn around.
No.
And look, as a proper Conservative, and I hope you agree with that, I'm confident that she's the best person to do the job because she is a proper Conservative.
I thought she would be, but I don't think she's doing that well. But that's another story.
She needs to shout louder.
She needs to do more, yeah. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Nottingham. Kemi Badenoch. Wow. Can't get to net zero. Going to be a disaster for the British economy. And there she was, sat in a government, sat in a Conservative government that were charging full speed ahead for this. Never said a word. And you know what? That's one of the reasons why I will never vote for them again.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's not me saying
my answer is welcome to at least 10 years of Labour.
Right.
OK, I'm afraid to say we're going to have a choice at the next election. I'm a patriot. I want to get rid of this Labour government, and I'm going to find the best way of doing so. Yeah. And so in areas where Reform are leading, if people want to vote for Reform, fair enough. I'm always going to say vote Conservative. But in areas where Conservatives are the most likely to defeat Labour, if you then vote for Reform, you are again splitting the Conservative vote, and you will end up with a Labour or a Lib Dem MP, and they are going to be absolutely the left-wing blob that people in this country hate.
Well, we shall see. There'll be lots of people who want to have something to say about that. Bob Seeley's here with me, former MP for the Tory party in the Isle of Wight. It's 6:35. More after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley Brewer will be here. Chris in Wallasey says this: we know the Tories won't keep Kemi as soon as the faux Tories in the party think they are in a position to replace her with another Labour-like leader. They will do it. We won't get fooled again. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people feel like that.
Well, we've got to prove them wrong.
Yeah. One from Anne, who says this, Anne from Wales. Mike, the Germans are closing and dismantling their first built wind farm. Why? Because it's not economically viable. Well, I think that's right. And one here from Michael from Birchington. The picture of Miliband in China shows the small union flag is upside down. Perhaps Talk can start a campaign to educate the country as to how to do it the correct way. Well, you'd like to think so. That happens a lot. Let's get a quick look at Keir Starmer. He tweeted this out last night. You might remember a couple of days ago he was out with his sleeves rolled up saying, you know, this is what we're doing to fix the economy. Check this out.
The goal of my plan for change: national security for national renewal. We're already
delivering on this, securing the future through our plan for change, on the priorities that matter to you and to working people across the country. So wages are now going up faster than prices. That's hugely important. We're clearing the asylum backlog at a record rate, and NHS waiting lists are coming down. Now, when we started preparing for today, I was going to say waiting lists have been coming down for 4 months. I can tell you today, the stats have just come out, they've been coming down now for 5 months in a row. So that's the beginning of the delivery that we need.
Is that porn music?
Sorry, that is 1970.
It's like from a porn movie.
That is music of a disreputable Scandinavian.
It's conjuring up a terrible image for me of what's going on behind the curtains, you know, while he's playing that music. But you know what? Here's the thing that I think they're doing, and I think it's quite disingenuous and cynical.
Yeah.
A lot of people are telling me that they get an appointment for a procedure to be done on the NHS, right?
Yep.
And the same week that they get the appointment, having waited for a year, they suddenly get another letter saying the appointment's been cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. Now, it seems to me that if they're doing that, that removes them from the waiting list
and puts
them on a new waiting list, so that therefore they reduce the number of people on the waiting list. What do you think of that?
I don't believe a word that he's coming out with all this stuff, because the problem is I think they're just basically mistaking the idea of saying they're doing it with actually having done it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge gap between what they're saying they're doing and the delivery. And you know, we see it in the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the reality in the economy? That we're losing jobs, we're shedding jobs.
The economy's crashing and burning.
What do the Labour Party say? We're investing.
They keep saying we're putting money in the pockets of working people.
No,
they're not.
They're not.
But they keep saying it, though.
Right, but it doesn't make it true. That's a problem. And when Starmer goes on about this 22 billion black hole, which A, didn't exist,
right,
and B, whatever hole there was, they've made a whole lot worse.
They've made it massively bigger,
you know, 9 billion to Chagos, 10 billion to the developing world for climate change, handing over hundreds of millions to their union buddies for making Britain ungovernable.
Which is going to get bigger and bigger, by the way, because there's new strikes looming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think there's just a reality test. It's like Starmer when he puts on a military uniform and sort of he acts like he was a soldier. Sorry, mate, you weren't.
Right.
And actually,
tragically, now he's acting like a prime minister. As a former member of the military yourself,
I find it actually really offensive.
It is offensive.
It's like he's going to start claiming it on his CV. Is he going to be doing
like the fake solicitor? And all the fake solicitor, Jonathan Reynolds. How is he still in a job, by the way?
I don't know.
You know, incredible.
Any other walk of life, he'll be out in his.
I know, absolutely mad. Can we have a bit more of that Keir Starmer music? I'm warming to the theme that this is like a 1970s porn film. Come on, because I don't want to conjure up the wrong image for you at breakfast. But just
national security,
for
national.
Just wait. Don't worry. Don't listen to anything he's saying. This is the music, right? Where is it?
So sleazy.
Yeah. What's happened to it?
National renewal. We're already delivering on this, securing the future through our plan for change, on the priorities that matter to you and to work.
It's awful. It really is. I mean, you're the one that identified it. I have to say, it doesn't do anything. That's huge. But it is. Listen to the music.
We're clearing the asylum backlog at a record rate, and NHS waiting.
We've all seen these films, you know. I mean, you pretend you haven't, but you know you have.
Now, when we started preparing for today, I was going to say waiting lists have been coming down for 4 months. I can tell you today, the stats have just come out. Coming down now for 5 months.
Jurgen's sort of creeping into the picture at the end. You know, hello, Jurgen. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm here to fix the cable TV.
So fix the boiler.
Fix the boiler. Do you have a gas boiler? Oh my God. Anyway, listen. Let's talk about a proper story, right? This is on the front page of Daily Mail today. The last of the few, it says, and this is an amazing story. The last Battle of Britain pilot dies, aged 105, and they've got his humbling final interview. John Paddy Hemingway joined the RAF in 1938. He was 21 years old, shot down 4 times. I mean, the kind of man that we don't see many of these days, right? I was saying to you just in the break there that my grandfather, who was also called Archibald Graham, pretended to be 17 to sign up for the First World War, and he was in charge of the horses in Flanders and all of that. I mean, this is the last of a generation of people. Yesterday we learned that, you know, a quarter of Gen Zers would like to actually stop working and just go on benefits.
Yeah.
What's happened to this country?
I don't know, and I'm just wary of all these things where people say, I won't fight. I mean, you know, they said that in the 1930s and they did in the 1940s.
Yes.
I just find it really moving. I'm not sure I've got very much to say in it, apart from God bless and thank you.
Yeah. and thank you.
You know, these people were an awesome generation. Like my granddad died leading his men in Tobruk. He was commanding officer of the South Notts Hussars.
Yeah.
I think they're based out of Bulwell.
Right.
He led his men, and most of them died in the Battle of Gazala.
And we now have a country that most people say now, or certainly most young people say, they won't fight for.
Okay, well, we need to make
Which I think is tragic.
A, I hope that's not true, and B, we need to make it one worth fighting for, and there's a lot to do, and you're right, we should have done more in the 14 years that we were in, but we, you know,
What do you make of Starmer saying that he's going to send British troops to Ukraine to be peacekeepers? I think it's pretty obnoxious, to be honest.
I find it... I just don't know how it's going to work, because the idea that you're going to have a stable peace, I don't accept. I think Putin is going to... The best case scenario is that Putin is going to temporarily pause while he builds up his armies even more. I think he's going to play the West, and I think he's dangerously playing Trump, who has just a bizarre psychological weakness in dealing with him. I think it's very dangerous. And I don't see, if it's not got a credible ability to defend itself, it won't be able to keep the peace, and it won't be able to defend itself, and it will be effectively a blackmailable, tethered goat.
You don't think that Trump is doing something which might end up being a lasting peace, then? You don't buy that?
I'm sorry, I just don't buy this sort of Trump great strategist. No, I think quite the opposite. I think he's dangerously naive, narcissistic, short-sighted. Look, I know that people, especially on the Conservatives and especially on the right, think that he's good news because of the stuff that he's doing on woke, and he's making himself massively popular in the States, and I wish we had more of that here. But what he is doing on Ukraine and his relationship with Russia is bad for the Western world, and it is very, very
But isn't
unhealthy.
what was going before that also bad for the Western world, and possibly worse in terms of the way that Biden was running it, in the way that
we were supporting a country fighting for its freedom.
Yeah, but we were supporting a country in continuing to have a war, which people were continually dying in.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
And it wasn't going anywhere.
Okay, but it's like saying, let's say there was a Greater Power in 1943, it says to the Brits, you just need to stop fighting the Germans.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that we...
No, but that's not what we did, though. We didn't say, here's enough money and weapons to continue the fight, but you can allow them to invade a bit of your country, but you can stop invading the rest of it. That's not what happened in the Second World War. And so people who say that, I think, are wrong. Because, in fact, what we did in the Second World War was we went, right, let's go and beat him. Let's go and take him on. Let's go and have a war. Well, the people of this country, I don't think, have the stomach for that.
Okay, the Ukrainians want their territory back. The question is, okay, maybe...
Yeah, but we don't, do we?
No, but we're not fighting there. So
no.
I just
so what are we doing then?
Well, we're supporting a country fighting for its freedom.
Fighting for its freedom and losing.
Against... Well, they're not...
Because they've already lost 25% of their country. They're not getting any of that back.
Mike, stop,
militarily.
Okay, give me a chance to answer.
Sorry.
They lost a chunk of their territory at the start of this war.
Yes.
Some of which they reclaimed. They've since lost relatively small amounts afterwards.
But most
you're saying they've got to sue for peace now because they're losing. That is a Trump line.
I'm not saying that.
And it's not factually
No,
accurate.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that most of the land that they lost pretty quickly.
They did.
And they haven't got any of it back, really. I mean, you can say they've got some of it back. But they've got a little bit back, but they haven't really made any inroads.
They got half of a county back, or half of Kharkiv. But you're right. But we're not saying, oh, you fight and kill lots of Russians because it's really in our interest. What we're saying is that they've got the right to try to defend themselves. And look, if they stop fighting, the war doesn't end. If they stop fighting, the Russians invade more land and kill more of their people.
Which is why it's necessary, surely, to do a peace deal.
Yes, but
try and make that work.
But that means you've got to have Putin on side as well.
Yeah, well, that's what Trump's trying to do.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, you're just assuming that the problem was with the Ukrainians.
No, I'm not.
But you're saying if the Ukrainians stop fighting, there'll be peace. No, if the Russians stop fighting, there'll be peace.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
But you're assuming.
But what I'm saying is that before Trump came in, nobody was having these conversations. We were just doing what Biden thought was the right thing, which was to continue to arm, continue to fund, and continue to do nothing really, other than just watch them not getting anywhere. And I think the people of this country and of America have said enough is enough. We haven't got the money. We can't just keep giving them billions and billions of pounds to go nowhere.
Okay, well, giving them billions and billions of pounds is a lot cheaper than having to spend billions and billions and billions more pounds building up our armed forces in an emergency way because Putin is going to be threatening.
Yeah, but we're
peace
now
in
doing
Eastern
that as
Europe.
well, aren't we?
Well, that's probably because we didn't support the Ukrainians enough in the first place.
Indeed.
And our deterrent effect didn't work.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is...
But you're assuming that you're making the assumption that now, if you talk peace, you'll be able to strike a deal with the Russians that will stick. And I'm sorry, the Russians here were the invaders, and I don't buy that, and I think that Putin is playing Trump to try to negotiate, at very least, far more concessions from the Ukrainians that his soldiers have won on the battlefield.
I'm sure that would
and
be
he will then come back for more quite soon afterwards.
I'm sure he might well do so, but the alternative is just more of the same, isn't it?
Well, if you're Ukrainian, you'd rather have defensible lines rather than having maybe a collapsing cohesion in your society, which is what Putin wants, or a larger scale invasion that you can't hold back. So the Putin is now going to look to try to undermine the cohesion in that society.
Well, I've spoken to plenty of Ukrainians now. Yeah. Many of them MPs who'd say, actually, we accept that we need to get peace. We need to have it. We can't fight forever, and we might even have to give up some of the land that we've lost.
Well, I go there very recently. I've been there very recently, and I talk to many of them as well. There is a sense. I mean, look, soldiers are tired. I've met the soldiers. I've been on their front lines with them. They're very, very tired. They're exhausted, and many of them are fed up. But they know the alternative is not okay. If there is a peace that can be achieved, that's great. But actually, the most likely option is that Putin will keep fighting and keep pressurising. And if he does have a peace, it's going to be a short-term peace where he rebuilds. What he wants to achieve is an end to martial law in Ukraine, because that means all those soldiers that were fighting, a lot of them will then go home. So Ukraine's borders will suddenly become much more.
But he's like a bad neighbour, isn't he? At the end of the day. But
yes, but you've got to stand up to him, and you're basically saying that if one side stops fighting,
but you can't keep calling the police every time the bad neighbour does something. Sometimes you just have to go, you know what? If you don't stop, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, but you're assuming that Putin will just stop, and that somehow this can be achieved, and I just don't buy that.
He'll stop if he's told to stop under the right circumstances, I think. You know, anyway, listen, let's get a voice note from Andrew. We could do this all day. Andrew.
Morning, Mike. It's Andrew from Wales. Could someone please tell me what the point in Keir Starmer and the EU is? They went for peace talks over Israel. Netanyahu has just started airstrikes again. They went for peace talks for Ukraine. Well, no one cares, basically. It's all about Trump and Putin. And then they went about all this bloody GB energy and net zero, and China and America don't care. They're like Dopey in the Seven Dwarfs. Everyone else is getting on with it, and they're just faffing about. Get rid.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about that comment. Keir Starmer, what's he doing? This from M in Bath says, sorry, is Keir in a Nintendo Wii game? Yeah, he might be. He might be just a character. I wish it was true. Me and Bob Seeley back after this.
51 Act is from 1951. The world is a very different place. Immigration and refugees are very, very different from what they were then. The French Interior Minister in 2021 said to Boris Johnson, this doesn't work for either of us. We need to set up a safe and legal route. We will process these people at our shores, and if it turns out they're legitimate, they have every right to come to England because they've been cleared to be an asylum seeker. We'll do it on your behalf. Boris Johnson fell out with Emmanuel Macron that week and decided not to go to the convention that he put on for the rest of the EU leaders. This could have been solved years ago.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So Morning Glory at 6:55. We haven't got a lot of time left. Bob Seeley's here. We could talk all day about all sorts of things. We're talking about, how long before the Labour Party stops blaming the Tories for the £22 billion black hole, and before people actually who want reform to be the next government stop blaming the Tories as well. But let me look at this. There's a great spread in the Sun, pages 8 and 9. Harry Cole's got an exclusive. The Culture Secretary has handed taxpayers' money to a Britain-hating punk duo who branded the UK an extremely racist. I don't know if I can use that. Well, I can't use that word, but how do you pass it? I don't know. Bad place, I think, is what we're doing. Let's have a look at this band. It's a band called what is it called? The Lambrini Girls. Have a look at this. 1976. I mean, for heaven's sake, that's not very good, is it? Lisa Nandy thinks they're the best of British, by the way. Apparently, we've given them a bunch of money. They've got a share of a £1.6 million grant for the Music Export Growth Scheme, despite saying that they're embarrassed to be English. I mean, this government waste story is not going away, is it? 27 quangos set up by the Labour government since they've been in power, still talking about trying to get rid of it. Meanwhile, almost 20,000 government credit cards frozen last night amid rocketing spending by civil servants around the world. What's going on?
We have a government that is practising a parallel reality.
Yeah.
On one hand, they're basically saying we're clamping down on quangos while forming them. Look, I mean, it's a free country. If people want to hate this country, they're welcome to it. I love this country.
Yeah, but let's not give them any government money, shall we?
Exactly, that's the whole point.
If people want to, you can hate it if you want.
If people, I'm sorry, you get bands that have to rely on government handouts, which A, probably aren't very good,
right,
and B, are probably in the wrong business.
Yes.
And C, if they hate the country, they shouldn't be getting taxpayers' cash.
Exactly right. Because, I mean, yesterday we did this whole story about Motability and the ease with which people who are on PIP allowances can actually get effectively a free car. It's just ridiculous. 1 in 5 cars in this country is a Motability car.
I know, and there's a secret agenda that they're all electric, and I think this is why electric cars get sold. It's by it's stuff on Motability. I mean, on welfare, and all this waste stuff, I think there's a very, very simple answer, which I hope Kenny will grip, because she's making some big announcements on policy today, and that is you just cap the DWP budget. You cap it and reduce it, and you force people to make serious choices.
Yes.
If you've got a mild mental illness, sorry, get back to work.
Yeah. I mean, I heard so many conversations yesterday, not all of them on this channel, but from people talking about mental illness, and everybody suffers from something. You've got the grief, the long tail of grief. I'm sorry, and I don't want to sound like some kind of dinosaur, but life is tough sometimes. Sometimes you wake up in the morning, you don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes you don't fancy going to work. Sometimes your girlfriend leaves you. Sometimes you get into trouble. Sometimes you deal with stuff, and you just have to get on with it, don't you?
I quite agree. I think we've got to cap all these budgets and just reduce them. And if you want to solve mild mental illness in this country, just maybe lower some taxes.
Well, lower some taxes, people feel a lot happier. And also stop actually kowtowing to people who say, I don't feel very well, I don't think I'll come to work today.
I know.
Get off your arse and get into work and build the economy. That's what I think we need, isn't it?
I quite agree. You just get... The problem is, unless people are willing to confront hard choices, they don't make them.
No.
You've got to go to the next election, cap on welfare budgets.
Yeah.
And then you prioritise pensioners because they paid in and they need their pensions, and people who are properly disabled.
Yeah.
But if you've got a mild mental illness, sorry, get back to work.
Right.
And if you don't want to do a job but keep sitting on your backside, you lose benefits.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple.
It isn't difficult,
and we need a more zero tolerance.
Yeah.
And when it comes to these waste stories, look, that's something that the US is doing right when they're highlighting all this stuff, and they're killing these really bad ideas.
Absolutely right. We're going to play some more of that porn music from Keir Starmer's video in the next hour. I just want to hear the isolated music. I just want to hear it, and I want you to think about what you could actually really be watching while you're listening to it. I'm sorry about this, but, you know, it's just my obsession this morning. This is Morning Glory. Back after this.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up for 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up, by the way, and the sun is so bright that they've had to close the blinds here at the top of the tower on the 17th floor of News UK, because they don't want to blind me. Or either that, or they just don't want the sun to shine on me, because it would make me look even better than I do now. I don't know what the reason is, but anyway, never mind. Coming up, we're going to be talking about a great many stories, including civil servants going on a mad spending spree with credit cards which have been provided to them by what? The civil service. Apparently we're paying for their trips abroad, we're paying for their crystal glasses, we're paying for their nights out, we're paying for their trips to day spas, massages, you know, we're paying for their entertaining restaurant visits, you know, trips to see the zoo. I mean, unbelievable stuff. They've finally been told by Pat McFadden, supposedly the enforcer of this particular government, who's about as miserable a bloke as I've ever seen in my life, who's never come back on this show ever since I asked him why he had 2 properties, one of which he rented out and then rented it out to himself. so that he can claim back the spores of that. Anyway, that's another story. Civil servants are one thing. Quango madness at Waste UK. The Sun have got a campaign going this morning talking about how ridiculous it is that while Keir Starmer on the one hand talks about doing away with all of the wasted government, while setting up 27, that's right, 27 new Quangos since he's been in charge of this government. We'll be talking as well about GP surgeries, as apparently they've got a new idea. They want you to go in and be weighed by them, because if you get weighed in a GP surgery, that will stop you being obese. I'm not sure how you're going to be able to make an appointment at the GP surgery, because of course at the moment you can't do it. You imagine ringing up saying, hello, what's the time? 8:30. Yeah, I'd like to come in and be weighed, please. Beep, beep, beep. No, sorry, leave a message. Your call is important to us. You'll be, by the time you get weighed, you'll be weighing about 20 stone heavier. So absolutely ridiculous. Mad Ed Miliband's in China. Nobody knows why. And the best news of the day, Jürgen is back. Right, GB Energy has apparently had a meeting. Nobody knows what about, nobody knows who with, because GB Energy, right, the only person who cares about GB Energy, apart from Jürgen, is Ed Miliband, and he's in China. So I don't know if it was a Zoom meeting, was he involved in it? Apparently, according to Jürgen, they're very, very excited about setting up GB Energy, even though they don't seem to have a clue what they're actually doing. Astronauts have been rescued by Elon Musk, even though everyone thinks he's a fascist. And of course, there's a big welfare backlash still going on. Apparently, if you're not that disabled, you're not going to get any help at all, I'm afraid. You've got to be really disabled in order to get any money at all from this government. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Benedict Spence is here, Conservative commentator. We'll get his view on all of this. It is absolutely incredible this morning. Once again, a bit like yesterday, we'll continue our conversations about Motability, about the waste of money that we are spending on all of these people who are getting benefits they shouldn't get. And also, what about council tax? We talked about that yesterday. Gone up absolutely through the roof. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Let's get a voice note from Jay on Net Zero.
Morning, guys. Fantastic show as always. Couldn't be without it. Every morning, absolutely brilliant. I just want to say, the other picture that we've got here is that more and more people that are coming in illegally by the thousands that get cleared to stay in the country are going to buy motor vehicles, motorbikes, etc. Well, the more and more that come in, the more and more the emissions goes up. I thought the government was trying to reduce the emissions.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jay. You might well be right. Also, we've got a brand new story for you, which is actually a Talk exclusive, which I can bring you. This is on top of the story that we did last week about driving lessons being given to asylum seekers and illegal migrants who have pitched up in Folkestone on the southeast coast of this country. It turns out that now there's a staggering £8.8 million worth of taxpayers' cash splashed out on free driving lessons for people who are claiming PIP. Right? This is personal, what's it called? The personal independence allowance or something? Independent payment. Figures released to Talk reveal that a total of 5,404 people were given a grant to learn to drive through a Motability scheme. There's that word again, Motability. Successful applicants received up to 40 hours behind the wheel, with the average claimant receiving 1,630 quid for their lessons. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely and utterly incredible. Just before we speak to Benedict Spence, let's remind ourselves of Jürgen. This is Jürgen Meyer. He's the head of GB Energy, right? This is what he's got to say.
Great British Energy stems from one very simple idea, that British people should have a right to own and benefit from our own natural energy resources. This is why Great British Energy is 100% owned by the British people, for the British people. Our goal is to help communities and bill payers reap the benefits of clean, secure, homegrown energy. Our journey to energy security, clean power, and net zero is truly on path, and we at Great British Energy are here to accelerate that exciting journey.
Yeah, right, Jürgen. Sorry. We're on path. That's a new one. Let's welcome Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Benedict, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
I'm sorry I can't take Jürgen seriously, because the man clearly has been given this job, which is a non-job, He works for an organisation that has no energy. He has plenty of energy himself, but they don't actually own any. They're not selling any. They're not buying any. He doesn't have an office. Apparently, they've had a meeting, but Ed Miliband, their chief sort of shouter, is in China. So I don't know who they're meeting with. I'm sorry to be so kind of dismissive of it, but do you share my kind of ridicule of this organisation?
Oh, of course, and the whole edifice and the whole concept of Ed Miliband, frankly, being in China to do what? To tell them to stop burning coal? They don't even know who he is.
No, exactly. Yeah, he's meeting up with. I think it's a picture of him in the Sun meeting up with the deputy leader, I think, of China, and of course that could be anyone.
It probably is anybody. They thought, well, Ed doesn't know, does he?
No.
And we don't care. We'll just get an aid in, and Miliband will
look,
just...
this guy's the deputy prime. I mean, Xi is the king of China, basically. If you're not talking to him, you might as well not bother going.
Oh, of course. And if it's not a sort of a member of the 10-man sort of Politburo, then and again, nobody knows who they are in this country. Ed Miliband certainly doesn't. But it's all. I mean, it's the whole thing about Kemi Badenoch coming out with her announcements, on net zero.
Yeah.
Whilst we have this country, whilst we have this government sort of going, it's sort of hell for leather, as fast as it can go in an electric car that doesn't have any battery capacity to be hooked up to the grid. It's a nonsense.
It's a joke,
Rich
isn't it?
people are waking up to it. You can't hide this forever, that your bills are going up, and it doesn't matter how many times Ed Miliband goes, oh, at some point we'll be bringing your bills down, and people are just sat there going, yeah, but when?
Yeah.
Because it kind of feels a bit expensive now, and I'm not enjoying it.
No, I mean, they're literally taking the mickey out of the public and pretending, that they are the emperor's new clothes, and they're walking through all sorts of places in London naked and saying, oh, don't they look nice? Don't they look absolutely fabulous, their new suits? And, I think people are waking up to that, and whether it's reform that they're going to vote for, whether it's, the Tories, who seem unlikely. I mean, it's not looking good for the Tories. I mean, I'm quite surprised, actually, in a way, that Kemi Badenoch's made the front pages with her, I'm not interested in net zero by 2050, because in the end she's actually quite irrelevant, isn't she?
She is, and she's also said nothing in this announcement other than net zero isn't going to work, we're not going to get there, to which most sort of normal observers go, well, yeah, that's not news. It's taken you this long to come out and make that statement. What is entirely lacking is a coherent plan and alternative. She's not sort of sitting there saying, we're going to frack, we're going to drill, or we're going to build X many number of nuclear power stations.
Yeah.
So she's not even really grabbed the bull by the horns. She's just gone, oh, this green transition isn't working. And it sort of leaves the door open to saying, but maybe we'll drill, maybe we'll create nuclear power stations, or maybe I'll have my own green revolution and I'll come up with my own set of nonsense, because I know that people like that sort of thing. And I know lots of Tory MPs and Tory members and Tory donors quite like the idea, the fantasy of net zero. And that's what really concerns me. There's no bravery in saying the government's plan isn't working.
Right.
Everybody and their dog can see that it's not working. What she's not done, as usual, is give us an alternative plan.
Exactly. I mean, I had Bob Seeley in here doing the papers this morning, and, he was a good MP for the Isle of Wight. He didn't win back in the July election, and he's now no longer an MP. And he said, look, I did try and make a lot of noise, because people say, well, what's the point of him now saying that, we've got to rebuild the Conservative brand, we've got to rebuild our policies, we've got to make sure that we've got something to offer the electorate in 4 years' time. And I take the point that they say all that. He says, well, the thing is, I was not in the government. I did say things that should have been done differently. But the fact is that people have lost faith in the Tories, it seems to me. I mean, that poll that was out yesterday, in which it said that 355 constituencies would prefer Nigel Farage as Prime Minister to Keir Starmer, and only 6 actually wanted Kemi Badenoch. It's a pretty disastrous scenario for the Tories.
It is, but I think that can be changed by simply getting rid of a useless leader. And I think the Tory party needed to elect Kemi Badenoch as leader, because the Tory party needed to see that she was not the solution to the problem. And they needed to see that with a good sort of 5 or so years before the next election. That was what was vitally important there. They needed to select her and then go, oh, it turns out that this person who just says the woke mob have gone mad an awful lot but doesn't have a solution to anything is not, in fact, the answer. So, I think we had to get to this point. When people were saying the election result was the worst point, no, it needed to get worse.
Right.
And they needed to see how much worse it could get before it gets better. There is still ample opportunity for them to select a new leader, a new leadership with ideas, who get to the point, who don't sort of dance around the issue and go, well, this isn't working, that isn't working, but actually come here and say, and this is what will work. Kemi's not going to do that. I think we all kind of suspect who would do that. But then the question is, of course, would the party actually be brave enough to select a winner? They haven't done that for a couple of years.
No, exactly right. Let's look at The Sun on pages 8 and 9 today. They've done a bit of a waste of government money as a campaign, which we sort of kicked off last week in a way. It turns out that they've instituted another 27 quangos, while at the same time telling us that they're doing away with them, right? But the one that they've picked on this morning is the Environment Agency's chief, who is a guy called Philip Duffy, who earns £175,000 a year, but he's given a sort of list of demands about how and where he should be able to work, including a 4-page rider which basically says that he should be back in the capital in London no later than 6 p.m. Monday to Thursday, with a 2 p.m. finish on Fridays, because he doesn't actually start working there. He wants sustainable sandwiches, basically, and he says that he should have fresh PPE for site visits. He needs to make sure that any staff arranging official visits have an in-joke about his requests. He also says that he should consider a vegetarian option with plastic-free packaging. This is on top of all of the waste that we've seen in government, including that government waste by Lindsay Hoyle, who no MP, by the way, will criticise for spending millions and millions of pounds of taxpayers' money.
The thing that really gets me with all of this is I don't necessarily have a problem with your personal choices. You want to be a vegetarian, you want to go plastic free, that's fine. But do it yourself.
Yeah.
What's actually preventing you from preparing your own food, your own lunch, and bringing it with you, like most people do?
Right.
And actually, if you sign up for an organisation that is good enough to provide lunch or breakfast or whatever it is, you take what you're given. You don't start sitting there going, actually, I want X, Y, Z, and I have X many number of requirements. Okay, if you have an allergy to something, fair enough. But beyond that, I don't really see what business you do making demands. £175,000 a year. I know that inflation has eaten away a lot of the value of the pound, but that's still more than enough money for you to do this yourself.
Right. Oh, how about you just pick up a takeaway before you get on the train or whatever it is, like everybody else who travels
like
by
a
train
normal person
has to do. Exactly right. Let's talk a bit about disability, because that was a big story for us yesterday. Liz Kendall today is going to get up in the Commons, I think, and make a statement about who will now be ineligible for disability benefits. There's obviously a huge issue with these PIP payments, a huge issue with Motability cars being supplied to people, and a massive issue for all of these characters who are claiming, I can't go to work because I've got ADHD or because I feel a bit anxious.
Or because I vote Labour. That would explain a lot of people. That would explain why the bill has absolutely ballooned, and doctors going, well, yes, that does sound like a mental issue to me.
Yeah.
You better have all this money. Most people, you can already hear the backlash coming from campaigners and lots of Labour backbench MPs. People saying that this is cruel, that this is X, Y, Z, that this isn't what they got into government to do. The British people are very tolerant, very patient, very caring people. Too much, I think, often is the case. That's partly why I think we found ourselves in so many messes, because so many people in this country don't want to be difficult, they don't want to be rude, and so they let a lot of things slide. I think when a Labour government is saying, guys, this is out of control, this is too expensive, and too many people are creaming off the system who have no right to do that. When a Labour government does that, that should tell you how bad the situation is. And I think the British people in particular are fed up. And, I alluded to the effects of inflation. They're fed up of seeing their wealth decrease via inflation and via massive taxation for lots of people to just live at their expense, which is what's happening.
I mean, this is the thing, they can't seem to get it right, can they? Because no matter what they say, whenever you try and cut back on benefit payments, there's always an outrage, an uproar from either charity groups, from in this case, there'll be Labour backbenchers who are sort of revolting. In fact, probably Labour frontbenchers. Imagine, Angela Rayner's gone very quiet on all of this, hasn't she?
No, she's not. I mean, you remember when they said that they were going to divert money from the international aid budget towards defending their own country, how upset most of them were. And you could just, because that's actually what they care about. They don't care about ordinary British people. They don't care about value for money or governing. They care about looking good.
Yeah.
But honestly, though, it's just that situation where they're going to be very upset about it. They're going to say sort of how upset they are about it. But you touched upon it just there. Charities are coming out and saying how dreadful it is and how many people are going to suffer. Do people listening realise how much money goes from the government to charities in the country? It's more than half. More than half of all the money taken by charities in the UK is given to them by the government. It's taxpayer money. You don't get a say over it. It's the government going, well, this seems like a nice thing to do, and also these people will do jobs that we can't be bothered to do. So we give billions to charities every year, and then those charities turn back and go, huh, democracy, ooh, actual accountability, no, we don't like that, please give us more money.
Yeah, absolutely incredible stuff. Benedict, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us again. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Now, we were playing you earlier Keir Starmer's little speech, which apparently he made last week, but they decided to sort of revamp, right? We'll play you the whole thing. But what I wanted to do was to isolate the music, because it seems to me that it sounds like 1970s porn music. And with the help, basically, of our researcher, Nigel, in Temple Fortune in North London, we've found out what it is. Here it is. Have a listen. Brilliant. We got this from Dusty, who says Labour's 70s porn titles. Might be onto something here. Rachel Does Runcorn. Is the new Debbie Does Dallas. We're going to have to start something here, aren't we? I'm going to have to get you some porn titles. Come on. Listen, I know it's early in the morning. I'm sorry for anybody who is in any way upset by this, but I'm not really. Let's have some porn movie titles for old Keir Starmer. It's amazing, isn't it? Rachel Does Runcorn. Brilliant. 19 minutes past 7.
Well, on the face, it doesn't seem so, Julia. And I think when you listen to what Putin has been saying in the last few years and the last few weeks, you come to that conclusion as well. And Western intelligence agencies, as I understand it, believe that Putin himself believes he can still win. And his two main aims were to subjugate Ukraine completely back into Russia and to decouple the US from Europe.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here we go, 7:23. It's the Labour's porn music. Is basically what we've done, what we've found. Let's get a voice note from Glenn on climate change.
Hi, Mike. Totally agree with you. I'm not convinced that there's a climate problem. Whatever we do to this planet, it'll outlast us by millions of years. It's a cash grab, plain and simple. Have a good day.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Coming up, we've got all sorts of things to do. Kemi Badenoch has just copied Reform's policy on net zero, Mike, so she isn't the first to come out with that, says Lisa. I've got this from Barry, who says, if Rachel from accounts is looking to cut services and save money, why doesn't she look at how her fellow ministers are spending our moolah? But also look at the civil servants as well, who are spending it on their credit cards all over the world, by the way. Let's talk now, though, about potholes, because potholes are the absolute bane of everybody's life. My own son's car got knackered by one the other day. He's now got a flat tyre thanks to a pothole that he hit down in Sussex. We've got now a story in The Sun this morning in which it basically says that it could take as many as 12 years to actually fix all of the potholes that we've got. Road to ruin is what it says. £17 billion to fix the potholes, according to a report by the Asphalt Industry Alliance. And wouldn't you expect us to get the Asphalt Industry Alliance on? Gary Schofield is here. Gary, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. I mean, the potholes in this country seem to go from bad to worse, and everybody that I speak to who travels around the world in various different guises, whether it's for holidays or for work, they tell me that all the roads in every other country that they go to are all better than ours. I don't understand why ours are so bad. Why is that?
You're absolutely right about the state of our roads at the moment, because when you look at the alarm survey which the Asphalt Industry Alliance have published today, we see that there's, as you quite rightly say, £17 billion required to put the roads back to a state from which we can maintain them. But even more concerning for me is when you look at the statistics that 1 in 6 miles of road have less than 5 structural years remaining in them. Right. And that means that's 34,600 miles of road that if we don't do something seriously with them in the next 5 years, they'll be potentially undrivable.
Yeah, I mean, so, I think many of them now are. I mean, whenever I drive around now, London actually isn't as bad as it used to be, but certainly down in Sussex, where I tend to spend my time at the weekends, some of the potholes are absolutely prodigiously large, and you almost have to sort of have muscle memory in your brain to remember where they are, because if you drive around, you sort of know that some... But there's some, for example, in high streets that I go to, which go all the way across, so you can't even avoid them. You have to just go into them very, very slowly. And it's ridiculous. I mean, according to your report, it says roads in this country, on average, are resurfaced once every 93 years. That's ridiculous.
I think this is a reflection of the massive underfunding that we've had on the roads for decades. And coupled with that, it's not just the amount of money that's lacking, but it's the way that the funding is provided by the government, because the local authorities are faced with a situation where they get annualised budgets, so that they get spot budgets to spend on pothole repairs. And unfortunately, that doesn't allow the local authorities to plan the most effective way to look after the roads. So I'm very pleased to see that the DFT have written an article recently where they're pleading with the government to give a 5-year rolling budget. So that gives the local authorities a vision of what they're going to have to spend for the next 5 years, and therefore they can plan the most effective spending, and that is on preventative maintenance, not on repairing the potholes, because every time we repair potholes, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You know, you repair one over here and another one appears over there. We need to stop them forming in the first place to get back control.
Right. And how do you do that then? I mean, if you've got a scientific... I mean, I remember talking to somebody, I don't think it was you guys, but somebody who said they've actually now invented a sort of asphalt that grows. You know, I know that people make fun of me for my famous concrete scenario, but basically there is some scientific evidence that you can make asphalt actually repair potholes by growing and filling them, right?
I think the real crux to the matter is not we need to get off the subject of potholes and thinking about repairing potholes, because potholes are just the symptom. Once they've arisen, we've already had significant problems with the roads. So what we need to focus on is actually preventing the potholes forming in the first place and properly maintaining our roads. So that's the secret. Let's look at the proper preventative maintenance, which will stop them forming in the first place and give us much longer lifespans of our roads.
OK. But scientifically speaking, can you actually stop potholes being made? Because one of my arguments is always that one of the reasons they're getting worse is because cars, particularly electric cars, are an awful lot heavier. Electric vans, which now deliver all sorts of stuff to homes around the country, electric buses, you know, they're all massively heavy. They must be taking a toll on the actual surface of the road, mustn't they?
The way the roads are designed means that cars and small vans really have very little impact on the roads in terms of the structure. It's really the Arctics, the big vehicles, which have the significant effects. And you're right, traffic volumes are higher than have been predicted, etc. So there's definitely impacts on that. But the way forward is proper maintenance, because if we can rebuild the roads with something like a 60 to 80 year design life, but we need to maintain them, just like you build a good house, right. You need to maintain your house. Otherwise, it'll just fall into disrepair. Yeah,
because if you don't fix the roof, you know, eventually it'll fall in, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what's the actual breakdown, Gary? You may know this more than me. What's the actual breakdown of, you know, what the local council is responsible for and what central government is responsible for?
Typically, through the country, on average, something like about 55%, I think it is, of the funding comes from government, right, and 45% comes from their local authorities' own making.
Right. So presumably, we can say with relative accuracy that the local authorities are probably not spending enough of the money that they should be spending because they're spending it on something else.
Well, I think that's a very good argument. I mean, it's. I think one of the things that we're calling for from the government, first of all, is this 5-year rolling funding to give the local authorities plenty of vision. Yeah. But secondly, increasing the amount of funding that they're getting, and thirdly, ensuring that what funding is allocated is ring-fenced for roads, so that we can protect it and spend it where it's intended to be spent.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think I'm right in saying now that all insurance companies now will actually have a proper way of dealing with it. If you've gone into a pothole and you've damaged your axle, or you've damaged your wheel, or you've damaged your tyre, they will actually compensate you and refund the money that you've had to spend on it because of potholes. So it's actually affecting people's insurance now as well.
Oh, it's affected so much because, of course, any claims made against local authorities are taking money out of the what could be spent on actually mending the roads. Yeah. And so it's a vicious circle that just creates more and more problems.
Yeah, absolutely right. Listen, Gary, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Gary Schofield on the news, which is in the Sun this morning. The Asphalt Alliance, Industry Alliance, I should say, has estimated that it's going to be something like £17 billion to fix all the potholes in this country, and it's going to take 12 years. And it says here, right, this is unbelievable, that on average, roads are resurfaced in this country only once every 93 years. Amazing. A couple of messages from earlier. Mike, Bob Seeley just said that when you're outside Parliament, you see the world and how it affects people differently. Does that mean that our system is no longer valid or representative? Well, I think it shows you that they do live inside a Westminster bubble. Bob Seeley pretty much admitted that. And Dave says this, morning, Mike, your guest Bob Seeley saying, vote for us, we're not as bad as Labour, sums up politics. Give the British people a reason to vote for you, as opposed to why you shouldn't vote for somebody else. Well, I think that's a good point. Also, Martin has sent me a very nice picture of his dog lying in front of a wood-burning stove. I don't know if that's a live picture, Martin, but he says, this is what I call heating my home. And you're very right. It is one of the best ways to heat your home. Now, we've been talking about all manner of things this morning already, as well as what we did yesterday, Motability cars. Phil has got a voice note for us.
Hey Mike, Phil from Hampshire here. With regards to these mobility vehicles, why don't they go back to the times when, you know, in the 70s and 80s, when, if I remember rightly, they had a free-wheeled mobility vehicle. It was PAL Blue, I think. Why don't they go back to some kind of car like that? You know, it could be like bright yellow or something like that, so you recognise it as a mobility car. And I'll tell you what, if you had a car which was recognised as a mobility vehicle, nobody would want to drive one in this materialistic world.
Yeah, very true. Unless it's a BMW 4 Series, they don't want it, do they? Many of you have joined in with the the idea of porn movies for the Labour Party. Now, we played some of their music earlier, right, but we've also isolated GB Energy's music. Have a listen to this. it's the same. Similar, isn't it? How about this from Anna in Surrey? David does Davos. I think that's great. There he is. There's old Jurgen. He could probably be in a movie, couldn't he? Kieran is natural-born drillers, says Lewis. One from someone who doesn't give a name, Smash the Gangbangs. And Jonathan Reynolds, the fake lawyer. We've had a couple of confessions of a tool maker as well. Very good. Keep him coming. This is, of course, the home of common sense. Sometimes you wouldn't be struggling to believe that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We take our jobs very seriously here. I don't want any of you making fun of Keir Starmer and the porn movie music, because that would be wrong, wouldn't it? Coming up, we're going to talk to Lord Andrew Roberts, who's an historian, by the way, and a Conservative peer. He's going to talk to us about Israel. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:36. I'm Mike Graham. We've got lots to do this morning, including one exclusive story that we've got for you. £8.8 million of government money splashed on free driving lessons for PIP claimants. This has apparently been revealed to us. Successful applicants received up to 40 hours behind the wheel, with the average claimant receiving £1,630 for their lessons. Meanwhile, hard-pressed parents and workers shell out hundreds of pounds from their own pockets on extortionately priced driving tuition. Well, I can tell you that I was one of those, because I was getting driving lessons for my son, which were coming in at something like £70 a time. Absolutely unbelievable. Ridiculous amount of money that you have to spend. And then you can't get a driving test, because it turns out that there's also loads and loads of people who are ahead of you, whether they be illegal migrants, whether they be PIP claimants. You know, basically, if you're struggling and paying your way, life becomes much more difficult for you than if you were on benefits of one kind or another. But let's talk now to Lord Andrew Roberts, historian and Conservative peer. He's the author of a parliamentary report on the October the 7th atrocities in Israel. Even now, as we speak, there are still hostages being held, of course, in Gaza. They've still not been released by Hamas. There's some activity that went on overnight, according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and their Defence Minister Israel Katz. They instructed the IDF last night to act with force against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. You'll hear on the news that there are supposed claims by Hamas that 200-odd people have been killed. I'm not convinced that those are innocent people, of course, because we know that you can't rely on their figures. But let's talk to Lord Roberts, because we still have to have this conversation almost a year and a half, maybe 2 years almost on from when it all kicked off in that horrible, ghastly, dreadful day, October the 7th, 2023. Lord Roberts, very good morning to you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for talking to us. I mean, every time I'm reminded of what happened on that terrible day, I remember we all woke up and were shocked and horrified to see what went on. I'm amazed that we're still waiting for some of those people who were taken hostage to be released. You've written this parliamentary report about what happened there. What have you learned, I suppose, would be my first question, from what you found out and perhaps what we don't know?
Well, what this report does, do you mind if I just show it to you? It's
sure,
going on online literally now.
Yeah.
What it does is to take the reader through a minute-by-minute chronology of the whole of the 24 to 48 hours between 6:29 a.m. on the 7th of October when Hamas attacked, until finally the moment when they were forced out of southern Israel.
Right.
And it also goes into the circumstances of each of the deaths of the 1,182 people who were murdered that day. Many of them, of course, also tortured and raped. And so it's a gruesome read, I have to admit that. But nonetheless, I think it is necessary for us all to remember quite what happened, the depths of depravity that were committed by Hamas and its allies that day.
Yes, I mean, we've all seen, as journalists, and you were involved in that as well in your career, we've all seen some terrible things, but I don't think there's anything that I've seen, and I've seen some of the footage that many people have seen, but lots of people haven't seen from the day. You know, some of the stuff that Hamas filmed themselves, the social media that they put out. I mean, it's really the most awful, horrific scenes I think that I've ever witnessed one human doing to another, and just the terror on the faces of the people who were suffering. I can't really get it out of my mind, and I find it really difficult to understand anyone who kind of accepts it as the sort of as part of the conflict, because it really isn't.
That's exactly right. I, as an historian, can't really think of another occasion. I actually go back to the rape of Nanjing in 1937, to see something on that kind of scale, it done in that way, and deliberately. This is the other thing that comes out very strongly from our report, is that if you look at the plans that Hamas were making, the phrase books that they had given to their fighters, their terrorists, as they were crossing over into Israel, things like spread your legs and take your clothes off, and so on. You know, it's all horribly premeditated what took place. And you're right, that 47-minute video that we both watched was so powerful because so much of it, remember, was taken from the GoPro cameras of the terrorists themselves. And yet now, astonishingly, 18 months later, Hamas is attempting to deny that it even took place. There's a sort of Holocaust denial thing that they're starting up about it.
And that is the awful business, isn't it? That we can see very clearly that without Hamas, only then can there be some kind of settlement here, because Hamas is so ghastly and so awful and run in such a terribly brutal and misogynistic. I mean, misogyny doesn't even come into it really, it's a stupid word to use, but do you know what I mean? I mean, they're so barbaric. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, and I can't imagine that there will ever be peace in that region as long as Hamas exists.
Well, that's right. And of course, what it also does in power in Gaza is to educate future generations of young Palestinians to grow up thinking that Jews are not fully human, that they need to be killed en masse. And this is actually taught in schools, the sort of 8-year-old Palestinian Gazan children. And until they are forced out of government in Gaza, this is going to continue to be taught, and therefore it's just going to go on for generation after generation.
And how much, I don't know whether you address this in the report at all, but how much do you think of Palestine, particularly Gaza, is influenced by Hamas? Because, we hear all the time that, it's not fair to say that all Palestinians support Hamas, because it bloody well looks like they do. And I find it very difficult to understand anyone who sort of justifies the Palestinians' freedom and rights to exist on that land, because they want to absolutely cancel Israel completely.
That's right, exactly. It's in the Hamas charter. It's the driving force of Hamas. They've said, despite all these casualties in Gaza since then, they've said that they will undertake another 7th of October as soon as they possibly can. So they clearly don't care at all about the livelihood or well-being of their own people whatsoever. The sole reason that they exist is to try to wipe out Israel.
Yeah, and I mean, can you see an end to it? Because, as I say, we've got Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu admitting this morning that they've gone back into Gaza, even as the peace talks are kind of ongoing. And Gaza and of course, Hamas are claiming that they've killed 200 people, innocent people, which I'm not buying, really. But at the end of the day, can there be an end to this? What can you see happening?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right not to buy those numbers, owing to the fact that Hamas, the whole of the health ministry in Gaza is a propaganda arm of Hamas. So the numbers that we've been given right from word go, lots of them are completely impossible actual numbers. The way in which they arithmetically went up by exactly the same amount every day for the first few months showed that they were entirely invented numbers. So let's not even think about
And yet
that.
every news organisation, including our own, reports them as if they're true.
Exactly, and that has been terrible, obviously, for the Israeli position, especially on social media like TikTok and so on, where pro-Hamas propaganda outweighs pro-Israeli propaganda by something like 9 to 1.
Yeah. You know, it's extraordinary, isn't it? And I mean, as we speak, we know that less than half of the 59 hostages who still remain in those ghastly tunnels are believed to be alive. And in your report, you say that the youngest of the victims on October the 7th was actually just 14 hours old. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
They took, can you believe, when I was in Israel, I saw these. They took incubators for babies onto the attack in southern Israel. The Hamas terrorists brought incubators with them in order to capture infants, tiny infants, babies, essentially. I mean, the sheer ghastliness, frankly, of all of it it's as I say, it's all documented in this very scholarly report, which I hope is at least going to stop people from saying that it never happened. And I'm afraid a growing number of people are falling for that Hamas propaganda.
I know, and which is awful, isn't it? And how can people get hold of it, Lord Roberts, if they wish to see it?
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Let me just put on my glasses and tell you the URL, which is, this is the sort of thing I ought to have off by heart, shouldn't I? But nonetheless, thank you. It is 7octparliamentarycommission.co.uk.
Okay, we'll try and put that out on a tweet, and so people can just click on it and find it. Well, listen, I appreciate it. It's a great thing that you've done, Lord Andrew Roberts. Thank you very much indeed. We'll speak to you again soon, I'm sure. Lord Andrew Roberts there. I mean, I find myself really taken aback by this stuff. I really am quite badly affected by it because, as I say, I saw what happened. I saw the footage that a lot of people haven't seen, and it really is just awful. It's the worst of any human endeavour that I think I could even have ever imagined. And you know, we've been having some fun this morning, but you know, I'm now feeling like we can't now. Well, we can, but we can get back to that. But it's just been awful, just so awful to even consider what it was that those people did. Let's go back to mobility cars and driver's licences, though. Here's Rich.
Morning, Mike. Rich from Yeovil here. I'm a local taxi driver, mate, in my area, and I picked up a guy on the weekend, recently new to the country, and we just got chatting. He had an L plate in his hand, so I said, "Oh, you have to do a driving lesson?" "Oh, no, my test." I said, "Cool, wow, you're lucky to get a test so soon." I said, "How long do you have to wait for that?" Just 2 days he had to wait for his test. I know countless people that have been waiting months and months and months, you know, and knowing how our judicial system works, do we really think that when he's out on that driving test that he's going to get failed? I mean, let's face it, it'd be against his human rights, wouldn't it?
I mean, that is incredible, isn't it? My own son was trying to get a test for months and months and months. And in fact, you had to end up doing some kind of a ruse where you book a test in another place where you don't live. Because once you've booked a test somewhere else, if one comes available in your neck of the woods, you immediately get put into it. Apparently, that's one of the things that you can do. But yeah, absolutely unbelievable. So we've got people on, mobility car scenarios. We've got people getting driving lessons and tests who shouldn't get priority. We've got illegal migrants coming in and getting driving lessons and tests. What on earth is going on? Let's go back to GB Energy. This from Mike in Colchester. Morning, Mike. He says Jurgen is so disingenuous. When previously asked when the public would benefit from cheaper energy, he dodged the question and said it was a matter of government policy. Here he is again, gaslighting us with the same nonsense, using a pre-recorded clip, so he can't be asked any tricky questions. And of course, it's all done over that porn music, right? Another one here from Susan. Mike, loving the show. Sue from Essex here. That Jurgen guy sounds like he's got the same speech therapist as Starmer. Her fixing the foundations. Yeah, absolutely right. 7:48. More coming up after this.
And obviously to promote Shakespeare, to preserve properties where tourists would come who are presumably interested in Shakespeare and perhaps might even appreciate Shakespeare. And therefore this is another example of an organization that has been tempted into undermining its own purpose. I mean, they're actually staging Bollywood dance workshops.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm sorry, this is not my idea, right? This is the Labour Party and the government thinking that this is good music to put behind one of Keir Starmer's statements, right? Which we've decided just sounds like European porn music from the 70s. It really does. Janice says, morning, Mike, loving the porn title so early in the day. How about Red Ed and his massive turbine? Yeah, that'll work. And this from Paul. He says, please stop reading out the Labour porn movie titles. I'm trying to do a workout. Keep laughing halfway through the sets. Anyway, Kira's already told you one of the porn movie titles months ago. It is called Release the Sausages. Great show. Thank you very much indeed. They're going to talk in a moment to British Chagosian Jean-Francois Nelan. But this on the pothole scenario, Kevin in Stafford says, there's no point in fixing potholes around the UK. They're so bad that they all need complete resurfacing from end to end. That involves thousands of road workers, and we don't have them. Thousands of planing and tarmac spreading machines, and tarmac spreading machines, we don't have. And millions of tonnes of concrete and asphalt, we don't have. All paid for by the money we spend on common speakers, net zero, legal migrants, motability schemes, benefit scroungers, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, that is the problem. That's from Kevin. Let's talk now, though, about the Chagosian scenario, because the Chagos Islands deal was supposed to have happened last week. It so far has still not happened. Jean-Francois Nelan is a British Chagosian who's part of the organisation who is suing the British government, and quite rightly too. Jean-Francois, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. What as far as you know, is the latest situation? Because it seems as though we were expecting something to be announced last week, and we're hoping it won't be announced because we don't believe that we should be letting go of the Chagos Islands. What are you hearing?
Yes, correct. We were told they were meant to be signing something on the 12th of March. That's when the Mauritian independence from the UK.
Right.
I believe the letter that our lawyers have sent to the Foreign Office, it's kind of halt the deal going ahead for now.
Right.
But like you said, this should not have going ahead. It's a bad deal for UK, for the Chagosian. The Chagosian were not meaningfully consulted into that deal. Mauritius did not recognize Chagosian as a people. And we asking for the UK and Mauritius to recognize the indigenous right of the Chagosian, and respecting the Chagosian right.
Of course. And you're suing the British government. And what's your lawsuit about?
The lawsuit is for, I mentioned that, for the UK and Mauritius to respect and recognize the Chagosian as a people. And you should consult the Chagosian meaningfully into that deal. We don't know what's happening. And even though the UN has said the Chagosian right should be respected, but we can hear the Prime Minister keep saying about the RCJ ruling.
Yeah.
We know this is an advisory opinion, and it's not binding.
Right.
But
that's the thing, isn't it? That's the thing that's the most surprising, isn't it? Because the International Court of Justice does not have the right to order this. It just has a recommendation. I don't understand why the British government has taken a recommendation and decided they have to do it.
But it's all been done on the narrative of the friend. We know Philip's son, who's been the Mauritian lawyer.
Yeah.
And he was not representing the Chagosian at the RCJ. He was representing Mauritius, who is best friend with the Prime Minister. And then you heard Lord Hermer, who is again from the Labour donor, who went to Mauritius, was part of the negotiation team. But like I said, the RCJ was an advisory opinion. Even the UN Assembly has said the right of the Chagosian need to be protected.
Yes.
But they are ignoring that bit.
Right. Exactly right. It makes no sense at all. So, what is your next move? Have you got a court date for the lawsuit, or what's going on?
No, the second letter, which was sent to the Foreign Office, they have until the 25th of March to respond before it was a letter before action to the court.
Yes, and what will it mean for your fellow Chagosians if it does go ahead, this move? Because you don't want it, we don't want it. At the beginning of the conversation, even Mauritius didn't want it.
Yeah, correct. And it's a deal going ahead. Why I mean, like, it seems like the government doesn't care about the people.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about Great Britain. They're just going to do it as a place.
Yes.
But we will look at all legal avenues. We will explore all legal avenues to stop that deal going ahead.
Yeah. It is absolutely appalling, isn't it? Ridiculous. But listen, Jean-Francois Nelland, please keep in touch with us, and we'll like to find out whenever there is a development what we can try to do to stop it, because I think, like many people in this country, you don't want this to go ahead. Very good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. The Chagos Islands deal still on the table, it seems. Nobody seems to know really where it's going, when it's going to be announced. As I said, we saw Donald Trump saying when Keir Starmer was in Washington, D.C., that he seemed he'd had a look at the deal, but he hadn't really examined it in full, but he thought it looked like a good deal. We don't know yet whether he's going to kibosh it. We don't know whether he's changed his mind on that. We have heard hardly anything from David Lammy about all of this, of course, so who knows what this government is up to. You never really do know what they're up to, but you can be pretty sure whatever it is, it's not going to be good for us. Let's get a voice note from Richard on Ed Miliband.
Hi Mike, Richard from Telford. Just a quick thought on the old porn movies. What about Miliband whips his renewables out? Cheers Mike, great show. All the best.
It's a bit of a long title, that, but I can see where you're going, Richard. Thank you very much indeed. Graham says this. Good morning, Mike. When I did a road trip in Cambodia in 2000 in the aftermath of the Pol Pot regime, the standing joke was you could hide your car in the potholes. We're almost there. Yeah, Pol Pothole, you could call it here, couldn't you? Hi, Mike, says Mike in Cheshire. Potholes, we've had potholes fixed, 3 out of 17. They put up a sign a couple of weeks ago to close the road to finish the job, but no one turned up. The good news is that the 3 small repairs have held up, and the bad news is the rest of the road surface has peeled away and broken up, so that the entire road now needs relaying. A stitch in time could have saved thousands. Well, that seems to be one of the real problems of the way that potholes are kind of dealt with in this country, because they'll fix like one pothole in a road that's got an entirely ridiculous looking surface, like the surface of the moon, as somebody said yesterday, and it really is quite ridiculous. And unless you resurface the whole thing, what's the point of filling in one pothole? That seems to be the problem. A couple of more suggestions. These are both from Luke. Well-hung Parliament. We need a general erection now. Very good. And one from Michelle in Altrincham. She says, any chance you could dance around the studio to the music you're playing while loosening your tie? That would be TV gold. Steady on, Michelle. It's not that sort of show. You need James Whale for that kind of thing. He's on later on in the evenings when you can do that sort of thing. This is broad daylight. I'm certainly not succumbing to any of that sort of suggestion. Absolute rubbish. Anyway, coming up, Ryan Sabi's here from The Sun. We'll find out what Keir Starmer's really up to. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm here until 10, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along soon. Just before that, to tell us what's coming up on her show. The sun is up, by the way. We are supposedly moving ever so slightly into a bit of a warmer week, by the way. I haven't checked the temperature this morning. It wasn't that cold when I came out of the house this morning, but it's going to be, I think, by tomorrow, 15 or 16 degrees. It's going to be what they call a heat dome. It's going to be hotter than Ibiza. And somebody said to me yesterday, well, I'm in Malaga at the moment. It's not that hard to be hotter than Malaga because it's bleeding freezing. So, you know, you do have to remember to put these things into perspective every now and again. Ryan Saby coming up. We're going to be speaking to him about all manner of things, including the return of Jürgen Meyer, who's GB Energy's boss, of course. He's the guy who said that he can't decide on whether or not energy should cost what it costs. It's nothing to do with him. It's all to do with the government. Apparently, he had a meeting yesterday. Nobody's sure who he had a meeting with. We've also been talking about Keir Starmer's plan for change. He tweeted that out yesterday. Unfortunately for him, though, he seems to have accompanied it with what we can only identify as what sounds like 1970s porn music. So we've been getting a lot of you to get involved in that. We've been talking about potholes as well, the ridiculous nature of how many of them there are now in this country and how it's going to take something like £17 billion and possibly 12 years to fix them all. Also, of course, Liz Kendall is getting up later on in the House of Commons to describe to us exactly how she's going to take money away from the disabled. Many of you very upset by that. Many Labour Party people actually very upset by it as well. We've been talking about also the government waste. There's a huge campaign going on in the Sun, which we're keeping up with and we're joining in with, which includes things like one particular guy in charge of an environmental quango who makes £175,000 a year and has got a whole load of ridiculous demands every time he goes anywhere. It needs to finish at Friday at 2 o'clock as well. We'll also be talking about this block on disability benefits. People also being told to turn up at their GP surgery. I'm starting to get messages from people saying, oh yeah, I had a text from my GP the other day, wants me to come in and be weighed. See, in the old days, that would be called harassment. You might want to take a police officer with you. You'd be like, what are you doing? What do you want me? Come into the GP's office, take all my clothes off, and you want to weigh me, do you? Really? Oh, yeah? Yeah, I don't think so. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Liam.
Brought to you by the Labour government. A film starring Jonathan Reynolds. A solicitor that needs to be trained.
Yeah, The Fake Solicitor. I mean, that's not really a porn movie title, but it sounds like a good one. We've got lots more to do, of course. Keep your ideas coming, because it keeps us absolutely laughing, because it's the only thing we can do. Mad Ed Miliband, of course, still in China. Nobody knows what he's doing there. We'll try and figure it out for you. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 8. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. This from Damon, who says, morning, Mike. Damon from Wigan here. We had the council out and about spraying and marking potholes near where I live. However, it's been that long since they were sprayed. The spray markings now have been washed away with the weather, and now the potholes are bigger than ever, so that your car would actually disappear in them. Well done to the council for a speedy job. He says, have a great day. Well, this is it. I mean, people are having to navigate their way around their own streets. It's absolutely incredible. And talking of Ed Miliband, Trish says this: stop cutting down masses of trees. That would be a start. They capture CO2 and give out oxygen. They store carbon in the wood to reduce it in the atmosphere. They filter pollutants. They help reduce flooding. The energy they give out in nature has positive effects on mental health. They release water vapour into the atmosphere to help keep the temperatures down. Yeah, wouldn't you think that actually having trees is quite a good idea? But we know this more than anybody, that up and down the country, and it's probably happened in your town, they chop loads of trees down. Absolutely ridiculous. Sean says this: the majority of potholes occur around roadworks where services have dug up a perfectly good road and then poorly reinstated the surface. These companies should be made to guarantee the repair for a certain number of years afterwards, says Sean. Absolutely right. Let's talk to Ryan Savey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Ryan, a very good morning to you. I'm sure we'll talk to you, I'm sure, about the massive matters of state arising from the disability benefits rules that are coming in shortly, and also on Ed Miliband and his net zero commitment and what Kemi Badenoch's been saying. But we should really mention potholes are a massive story in this country. Page 17 of The Sun today, Ryan. It's going to take £17 billion and 12 years to fix them all. I mean, these are the kinds of things that really grind people's gears, aren't they?
Totally. If you spend more than sort of 3 or 4 minutes with a politician, you'll get through the niceties and you'll talk to them about what's really winding up their constituents and the people they represent. And lo and behold, what will always come up is potholes. This is a thing that MPs get a lot of mail about, and it's a bugbear of them. They encounter it every single day. Their cars are being damaged by potholes every single day, and that's why it's been fixed. And we've had so many times we've had government saying they're going to fix it, but every single time you drive down your road, those potholes are still there. And I'm reading the report today that these roads should are not being repaired every 93 years. It's terrible.
I know, it's really amazing. And you know what was really a good insight into what I would call the Westminster bubble was last Thursday night when I watched BBC's Question Time. Fiona Bruce kind of was very apologetic right at the end. She said, right, the final question, she says, we get these questions all the time, but we never usually do them. And incredibly, she said, I apologise because there are many more serious things going on. And she then introduced a guy who asked a question about potholes. And, you know, you could see the collective squirming on the panel of all the people who were there, all the MPs who kind of were like, oh, this is a bit grubby. Oh, this is a bit kind of, you know, low rent. Why are we talking about this? Can't we talk about, you know, international aid and Ukraine and all the really important matters of state? They don't get it, do they? They don't understand that actually this is the bread and butter of what people care about. And they said, and actually one of the MPs, I think it was the Labour Party cabinet minister, said, oh, do you know, it's true, whenever I go out on the doorstep, you know, this is what the kind of thing that people say. But it was really revelatory to me. This is how people who live in that Westminster bubble world think.
Yeah, sometimes there's a huge disconnect between MPs and the voters, or issues don't get the airtime that it deserves. But one thing to remember about every time a driver gets hit by, or they go into a pothole and their car gets damaged, it costs them hundreds and hundreds of pounds.
Yes.
And that's the kind of thing that winds up voters, and it turns them off politicians, and they start thinking about voting for someone else. Rishi Sunak tried to divert a lot of money from HS2 into potholes. We've seen some of that come through. Rachel Reeves has talked about £1 billion more to fund these to fill these potholes. But I think that the trouble is, every time you go driving, you still see these potholes in the roads, and that's the thing that winds everyone up.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about another great Sun campaign, which is all about how the government squanders your money, with a great piece by Harry Cole this morning about the Brit-hating punk rock singers who are called, can't remember what they're called, can't see it. Phoebe Lunny and Lily McCleary, who apparently spend most of their time saying that Britain is a horrible place, shouldn't really be visited. They basically say that it is one of the worst countries in the entire world, but they're in receipt of part of a £1.6 million grant from government. It's a bit like the USAID, this, isn't it? Where you get paid to tell everybody not to bother coming to Britain.
Yeah, no, it's extraordinary. There's £1.6 million of money going to British bands to help them tour, and it just shows you that has anyone actually done any checks on any of these bands to actually see what they stand for?
Yeah.
And I think the first thing, if you read any of the lyrics of this band, it brings it into question. Some people may call it art. Other people will be extremely, extremely upset that taxpayers' money is going to this. But there's also, I noticed in the report, there's a big band called Blossoms. They've had big hits, and they're in receipt of some of this money as well. So this sort of money should be used for new bands to encourage them, rather than going to bands that are either established or extreme. You know, there's no issue with art, but when they're extremely controversial and being anti-British, do we really want to be giving them the money?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, people have said, well, what's wrong with them being anti-British? Well, there's nothing wrong with it. If they want to have that view, they're called the Lambrini girls, by the way. But you shouldn't be giving them government money. Lisa Nandy, apparently, the culture minister, has come out and said that they're the best of British culture.
I just don't. I can just see what's happened in Whitehall. Someone's applied for some money. It's been given out, and absolutely, well, very little due diligence has actually been given. I very much doubt whether someone sat there in Whitehall in recent weeks has gone through their back catalogue and said, "Well, let's go through the lyrics and see if there's anything controversial." Perhaps that needs to be stepped up a little bit and improved.
Yeah, indeed. And the other story on the spread is government waste Mark III. Almost 20,000 government credit cards were frozen last night amid rocketing spending by mandarins. Holders of procurement cards, which allow civil servants to spend money without ministers giving their permission, is absolutely off the scale. Spending has soared apparently 300% in the last 4 years, topping 675 million quid. I mean, this is unreal. I mean, if somebody gave you a credit card to work for, to help you do your job here in the Sun, you would have pretty strict, I would say, limits on what you could spend. These people are spending £2,493 at a shoe shop in Barbados, right? £965 racked up at a bowling club in Toronto, and apparently Pat McFadden has declared that, we're going to put a stop to this. Well, how is it possible they've even started it? 675 million quid.
This is one of these ideas, one of these schemes in Whitehall that's just got totally out of hand. I did a story just the other week that civil servants spent over £1,000 on the Nespresso coffee pods. You know, these things are just sort of getting out of control. Now, I think, speaking to people in government yesterday, what they don't want to try and do is try and crack down on people who are in a war zone. That's not the idea. The idea is on the waste and actually making sure there is a chain of command, a line of command. So if you are using one of these, you actually do have the appropriate sign-off. But some of those examples are horrendous, and you can just see how it's got out of control. And someone like Pat McFadden has got in there in recent months and thought this has to end.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about the big story of the week, which is the benefits business, right? Liz Kendall's getting up, I think, later on this afternoon to talk about how she's going to try and wipe billions off the benefits bill. What do you think she's going to say? She's already facing a backlash from her own Labour Party MP backbenchers, some maybe in the cabinet as well. Angela Rayner can't be in favour of it. What do you think she's going to say?
I think one thing they'll be definitely looking at is the PIP payments, the personal independence payments.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that they'll be trying to do is, obviously there's been a lot of backtrack on this policy. It looked like that there was going to be a freeze. It looks like that now will go up with inflation. But I think one thing they'll be very, very keen to do, and we'll get an announcement on this afternoon, is look at that eligibility criteria to make sure that if you are receiving those extra payments, you actually do need it. And I think that has been the big problem while this benefits bill has just ballooned out of control. But if this is the big idea and they're only going to save £5 billion, it does make you wonder, when the legislation comes through, expect it in May, whether there may be even more watering down because of that rebellion, that revolt, that unease within the Labour ranks. This is meant to be the big thing. And to my eyes, it's not saving a massive amount. And there was a few squeals of anger from Labour MPs, and it seems to have put the jitters up number 10 and across Whitehall a little bit. So if they want to save some big money, they may need to look a little bit harder.
Right, and we're just watching the front door of Downing Street, number 10 there, because there's some a meeting going on. The cabinet ministers turning up to arrive to see Keir Starmer. I don't think there's any kind of reshuffle going on. I presume this is just business as usual. Let's talk a bit about Jürgen, my favourite former German and sort of CEO of Siemens, who now runs GB Energy. He made a little statement yesterday because apparently he had a meeting. Have a look.
Great British Energy stems from one very simple idea, that British people should have a right to own and benefit from our own natural energy resources. This is why Great British Energy is 100% owned by the British people, for the British people. Our goal is to help communities and bill payers reap the benefits of clean, secure, homegrown energy. Our journey to energy security, clean power, and net zero is truly on path, and we at Great British Energy are here to accelerate that exciting journey.
An exciting journey. It's on path. That porn music in the background, by the way, Ryan, we've been reminding people that they should put in a couple of ideas. Here's one from Burnside who says, how about Jurgen's heat pump? Yeah, that could work. What's he talking about?
Yeah, well, I think the most interesting thing there is he's in charge of GB Energy, which is based up in Aberdeen.
Yes.
It looks like he's speaking from an office in London there. So,
well, they don't have an office in Aberdeen. They don't have any premises that are actually specifically made out to GB Energy. They don't have any energy to sell. They don't buy any energy. They don't appear to have a website. They don't appear to have any employees. Jurgen seems to be it, basically.
Yeah, and I think he was under a lot of criticism recently, I think, over actually bringing down bills and how many jobs GB Energy will actually create. So I think GB Energy is very much in its infancy, but as
it's been
in
its infancy for a while.
It has, and I think as the government tries to push towards net zero, it doesn't really feel like it's taking the public with it. And obviously we've got Kemi Badenoch making a big speech on the subject today.
Well, yeah, I mean, is there any point to that? Because we were talking earlier, Bob Seeley was in this morning, former Tory MP for the Isle of Wight, and he was saying that, you know, this is a great step in the right direction for Kemi, but a poll this week which showed that basically only 6 constituencies thought that Kemi Badenoch would be worth having as a Prime Minister made pretty sobering reading for them, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of disquiet amongst Tory ranks that they appreciate that she has only been in post for 5 months or so, but it feels like there needs to be a little bit more meat on the bone. There needs to be a little bit more policy. Now, she's trying to set out her views on net zero, but at a time where just a few weeks ago you had reform setting out there, big policies on net zero, Kemi Badenoch is just coming up with language, criticising her predecessors on net zero, saying that they sort of took the public down the garden path on the targets, and saying it's an impossible. The actual 2050 target is actually just impossible. So I think you'll get some language from Kemi Badenoch today, but it just feels like the policy is going to come down the road a little bit later. This is a big policy renewal moment for Kemi, but has she got the time as Tory leader to actually fulfil those promises and actually deliver those policies before it's too late and the wagons are circling around her leadership?
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Ryan Sabey. Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. I got this from a couple of people actually. Confessions of a Voice Coach. That's quite a good porn title for these people. George says, this morning, Mike, great show. My job involves fitting trackers to these Motability vehicles. You'd be surprised how often these cars get cancelled once they are told there's a tracker installed to make sure the car is being used for Motability purposes. I do wonder why. Yeah, absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Danny.
Morning, Mike. Danny from Stoke. For years now, Australia have been mixing plastic with their tarmac. From what I can see, it's working. It reduces their plastic waste and makes the roads more durable. So, I mean, I haven't seriously delved into it to see all the details, but from what I read on the basic article, it seems like it's working. So why can't we do something like that? You get 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, they use recycled glass to resurface roads. You see that all the time. You see it like glimmering in the sunshine. Also, I've said before, there is now a scientific project which is actually creating asphalt that grows. You put it into a pothole and it sort of grows to fill the space. And that, of course, is similar to growing concrete. No different at all. So, once again, I was right. Coming up, we've got more to do. We're going to talk to Ross Clark. He's got a big piece on The Sun's page 10 this morning about the cost of the benefit business. It's a burden, he says, that will bankrupt Britain. Today is supposedly the day that Labour takes a great big axe to all of it and starts cutting people out of the benefits business. Let's see how successful they will be. Coming up next on Talk.
And I think it's terribly important that the government doesn't slash benefits for those who are really disabled.
Absolutely.
And not getting a huge amount of money out of the system. So I think it's good the government's backed off on the idea of freezing the independence payments, because those are genuine needs for many people. But you're right, the issue is how many people qualify for these things. And why are 1 million young people now not in education, employment or training at all? And why do many of them pass a very simple test to say that they have mental ill health, which prevents them ever working?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 8, all the way through here, of course, until 10 o'clock. Dory from Norfolk says, everything I did last Starmer. Is it too early for this? Well, no, that's not a bad one. An electric Eddie's pipeline, says Anna in Surrey. The hits just keep on coming. Organ McSweeney, says Taunton Tim. That's quite good. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Nottingham. Porn films. Here you go. The trainee solicitor, Rachel Reeves, Ed Miliband, and Keir Starmer in Zero Morals.
Very good. Should we have a little blast of the music just to remind everybody why we're doing this? See, just picture the scene. Rachel, Keir. Oh, here comes David Lammy. It's like a, living room scenario. I shouldn't carry it away. There's a Downing Street cabinet meeting going on today, so just imagine that music playing as they all sit down in the room. And there's a table, there's a bloke with a moustache, Anyway, Ross Clark is here, columnist of The Sun. Cost of benefits, it says on page 10 in his column, it's going to rise to £100 billion by 2030. I mean, for heaven's sake, some interesting statistics as well, including 1.2 million people under the age of 25 claim disability or incapacity benefits. That's up 2/3 on 2019. The number of 16 to 24-year-olds who are not in education, employment or training hits an 11-year high of almost 1 million at the end of last year. 3.3 million people claim personal independent payments. That's PIP, up more than 1 million since 2019. I mean, this is unbelievable stuff. Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
You know, for all of the conversations that you and I have about net zero, about government waste, about all sorts of things that affect the economy, I mean, this is huge, isn't it? I mean, this is probably the single biggest problem that we have in this country.
Yes, and it's amazing the way it's sort of crept up on us over the past decade.
Yeah.
The coalition government actually did start to get disability benefits down, out of work benefits down between 2010 and 2017. But then it started to creep up again. And then come the pandemic, there was this real explosion in people making claims. I mean, obviously there was a temporary issue there, but, you know, that's in the past now, 5 years ago.
Right.
And the benefits bill is still rising out of control. And it seems that, you know, the lockdowns and furlough schemes seem permanently to have changed the attitude of Britons, and particularly young Britons, to work, and have enjoyed it rather too much, being stuck at home watching.
Well, we saw a shocking story the other day saying that something like a quarter of all Gen Zers, those people between the ages of sort of 18 and 24, are considering not working at all, and if they've got jobs, they're thinking of giving them up so they can just live on benefits.
Yeah, that was a PricewaterhouseCoopers report. Who'd spoken to a lot of young people, and so a quarter of them suggesting that, you know, they might actually sort of give up the hope of work and just commit themselves to a life on benefits, sort of no career at all. And you know, I mean, it's an outrageous waste of talent. I mean, it's not just the bill to taxpayers, it's the effects on the economy generally, because if you've got a sort of quarter of your population being unproductive, well, that's you know, a huge drag anchor.
It really is. I mean, has it become easier to claim benefits? Because I remember back in the day when I didn't actually claim benefits at all, but I was told when I got fired from a job that I should go, this would have been back in, I don't know, sort of 90s, I was told I should go and sign on in order to keep my national insurance payment being kept up while I was looking for another job, because they informed me that since I got a redundancy payment they wouldn't be giving me any money for being unemployed. Thank you very much indeed. But I mean, they were quite stiff on, you know, every 2 weeks you had to go and tell them whether you'd been for any job interviews or whether you'd been able to acquire any information about possible job scenarios that might be going on. I mean, you couldn't just sort of sign on and just get paid benefits for the rest of the time. You were actually asked to be quite active in looking for a job.
Yes, you could. And I remember back in the 1980s, you used to be allowed to sign on for as a student for the summer. You could sign on benefits. So, you know, there have been sort of excesses in the past as well. But what's the real difference now is with people getting signed off on sick with no requirement to look for work at all. And, you know, the blame for this lies quite a lot with work capability assessments. You know, before the pandemic, most people undergoing these, they'd have to report to an office, they'd be assessed, and, you know, then the decision would be made. And now fewer than 10% of these work capability assessments are carried out face-to-face. Most are on by telephone or carried out online. And you can claim even if you're not in the country. I mean, if you're on the end of a telephone or your internet connection,
well, you can be anywhere,
couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly right. So what chance has Liz Kendall got, even if she wants to do it, of success this afternoon when she announces whatever it is that she's going to do?
Yeah, well, it seems that the governments are targeting £7 billion worth of benefit cuts. To put that in context, the bill last year, total bill, was £62 billion, £64 billion. So, you know, they're sort of trimming a little bit more than a tenth, I suppose, of the total benefits bill. That's their ambition anyway. But the trouble is there's a lot of political obstacles in that there's a lot of Labour MPs will not accept any cuts to benefits at all. And even with a majority of 160, the government seems sort of uncertain to achieve persuading Labour MPs to vote for benefit cuts. But I think there's another big political problem coming down the road, which I don't know whether the government's really considered this, and that is all the proposals we heard are sort of to cut benefits for sort of UK citizens. What happens with the migrants, the illegal migrants, asylum seekers? The number of people, asylum seekers, being housed in hotels has increased by a third since Labour came to power, in spite of them promising to sort out this problem. And, if you're going to have UK taxpayers denied benefits at the same time, the sort of asylum seekers are still going to be enjoying the sort of largesse on the taxpayers. That's going to be a very big political problem.
Yeah, and also quite a few people have pointed out to me that isn't it interesting that despite the fact that we say, illegal migrants can't get benefits, immigrants can't get benefits, they obviously do, because the number of benefits increases, you would say, have gone up sort of exponentially with the rise in immigration as well.
Well, I'm being housed in a 4-star hotel with food and so on being laid on. That is a benefit.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about them. I'm not just talking about them, because that money doesn't come out of the benefits budget. That comes out of the Home Office budget. But what I'm talking about is that people who have come here illegally and are now settled in the country because they've been granted asylum, and they're now getting benefits because they haven't got jobs.
Yeah, well, there's another stat to go with that. £7.5 billion of the welfare bill is going to households which have at least one foreign national. So that gives you an idea of the sort of extent of the growth in benefits going to foreign nationals.
Yeah, absolutely right. Extraordinary stuff. It's a great piece, though. Well done. Thank you very much indeed. Russ Clark writing a piece on page 10 of The Sun today. The cost of benefits is a burden that will bankrupt Britain. No question about it. Coming up later on in this show, in this hour actually, we're going to be talking to a man who's closing down his restaurant due to all the extra taxes that are being put on it by Labour and by Rachel Reeves, and simply, just can't go on. Putting people out of work through no fault of his own, refusing to help the government raise VAT, get national insurance. So, in effect, once again, of all of their kind of ridiculous fiscal policies, is that they actually get no more money, they actually get less money. That's the truth. George in Birmingham says, this morning, Mike, great show. With all the serious business going on, you all managed to put a smile on our faces. On the topic of benefits, having worked in a job centre, the vast majority of those young folk claiming low-level sickness benefits live at home, so it's essentially pocket money for doing nothing. There will be too much pushback within the DWP to make the changes required. It's all hot air from the government. I suspect you're absolutely right. One here says the yellow paint around the potholes is emblematic of many Labour solutions to national problems. They will fix the economy, they will build more houses, they will spend more on defence. Can we start to see these statements as yellow paint solutions? I think that's a very good point. They do keep saying this is what we're going to do. They don't actually do anything. This from Lee in Hampshire says, morning Mike, don't get me started on potholes. My van has suspension knocking at the moment because I can't dodge potholes anymore. Last week I damaged a rim and ruptured my tyre sidewall because I hit the lip of a drain cover because they dug up the road to repair the road from potholes. I can't win. I know, it's absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? Councils mark potholes with paint to prove that they have identified them, says Tom in Merseyside. Once they have identified them for repairs, it exonerates them from any legal claims from drivers whose cars have been damaged by them. I was told this by the local council solicitor who rejected my damages claim to my car. Yeah, absolutely right. Andy's got an idea for a couple of film titles. How about Keith's Briefs? That's not bad. There's the music again. And one from Dale, which I think might be one of the best ones yet. Friends Without Benefits. It's the Labour porn show. It's good to watch, but after a while you get sick of it. It's as simple as that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8:38. Fee says this: why are we giving benefits to foreign nationals? It's absolutely insane. The point of immigration is that they come over and be a net benefit, but we seem to just import uneducated takers with unpleasant views and engage in criminality. Well, that does seem to be a bit of a worry, that, isn't it? Particularly when it comes to the illegal migration, of course. Coming up, we're going to talk to Serge Sefai, Executive Head Teacher of St Thomas the Apostle School here in London. First, a voice note from Maddie.
Morning, Mike. This is Maddie from Essex, loving the show as usual. A miracle took place down my road. I'd complained to the council about a certain pothole that as I turn left off the main road into my road, I have to basically get on the other side of the road, which is the wrong side of the road, to avoid a pothole. And, you know, I was shocked that they turned up within 2 weeks, but I knew there'd be a caveat because on closer inspection, there was another pothole that was literally 5 centimetres away from the one that I'd complained about, and they just left it as it was. I was absolutely shocked. Just couldn't make this stuff up. See ya.
Brilliant. Maddie, thank you very much indeed for keeping us up to date with all of that. Alan from Peterborough says, morning, Mike. That music sounds like the background music to a speech therapy session on Christmas Eve. Keep up the good work. Yeah, you can just imagine, you know, Kieran is a speech therapist. Hello. Hello, who are you? I'm your speech therapist. Oh, do come in. Why are you wearing a mask? Sorry, are those handcuffs? No, never mind. This is 8:39. Serge Sefai is here. Serge, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. We've got a piece of information here which says school absence levels are up 67% since 2020. I'm always slightly suspicious when I see percentages rather than numbers, and that sounds like a big high rise from 5 years ago. Is this all down to COVID?
I'm not sure who you start to blame. I happen to think that attendance levels are largely linked to your previous topic, actually.
Yeah.
I think there's things in our country is just too easy. We lack incentive. Kids lack responsibility, including their parents, to get their kids into school. Last I heard, keeping your kids away from school was illegal, unless you had a bloody good reason.
Right.
So once again, we're back to who do we blame? Well, the schools are an easy target. I get looked at by Ofsted. Our attendance figures are checked. But I can tell you now, you know, most of the children that have trouble with getting into school, they're linked to social services almost from birth. Where's the accountability there? In the old days, I'm old enough, where parents used to be taken to court for not sending their kids into school.
Yeah.
Now you've got doctors signing off everything. And once again, I'm back to that original point where I think we need to look at how we're bringing up our children. And if we're bringing them up to think, well, everything's easy anyway, you don't need to go to school, you don't need to get qualifications, because ultimately you don't need a job. You know, we end up with what your previous topic was about.
Right.
An awful lot of people wanting to be on benefits, taking it easy, no responsibility, and then you wonder why the country's in such a mess.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure why people aren't coming into school. All I do know is it's far too easy for kids to miss school.
Yeah, exactly right. And I guess for parents, it's far too easy for them to allow their kids to miss school because they're not going to work. I mean, Fridays in London now, I don't know about you, Serge, but I notice it massively down in terms of footfall, in terms of people on the tubes, in terms of the way that the streets are. They're just very, very quiet on a Friday. So if you're a parent who doesn't go to work, your kids aren't going to go to school, are they?
Exactly. Is this working from home?
Yeah.
It's not proper work. I don't care what anybody says. And people are going to say I'm a dinosaur, I don't understand IT, etc., etc. Well, I do understand getting up early in the morning and going to work and earning your money, you know, and feeling quite good about it, actually, because you meet colleagues and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think it's good for the soul, good for the brain. And but I know you've got me on for a slightly different reason. But this attendance thing is linked to what I've been talking about, what you've been talking about, is that we've got to get back to basics with our kids. You know, first of all, you want a nice fancy phone. You know what? You're going to have to save for it. You want a nice house to live in. You want food on the table. You're going to have to work for it one day. You know, and if you want the big bucks, you're going to have to get qualifications. You're going to have to go to uni, or you're going to have to get a really good manual job where you are working really, really hard every day.
Yeah.
But all these rules that we grew up with has been thrown out the window, it seems, by people who, I always call them do-gooders, but they only do bad in my book. You know, talking to kids as though nothing's their fault. Don't worry about the future. Someone's going to pick up the tab.
Yeah.
And at the moment, there's only certain people picking up the tab, and they're the ones going to work and actually paying taxes. And it's not fair.
It really isn't fair, because people who do, and you've often said this, that during the lockdown, you had more children coming to school than most schools because they needed to be there, because their home environment was not great for them. And so those are probably the kind of kids that are not coming in. And those are the kind of kids who are probably suffering more than anyone by not attending school, by not getting into the habit of attending school.
Well, school is like early employment. I always tell the kids, I mean, they've had 40 years of me telling them, you're just preparing yourself for work. Why do you think I insist on you coming in early in the morning? Because if you don't go to work on time, you're going to get the sack. Why do I insist on a good uniform code? So that you come in prepared for work and appropriately dressed. Because if you turn up to work looking poorly, or what the boss doesn't like, guess what? You're going to get the sack. Equally with attendance. You don't turn up to work, eventually you're going to get the sack, which is why I want you in school every single day.
Yeah.
You know, so all these things that we do in school are supposed to link into the next step, i.e. contributing to the society you live in, getting a job and paying taxes and living your life. That's not what's happening at the moment. You know, and I'm not even talking about the immigration side now. I'm talking about our own kids.
Right.
Our own kids that we bring up, something's going very badly wrong, and we need to get to grips with it. But I'm not sure our political class have a clue, quite frankly.
I don't think so.
They're in their own nests.
That is the problem, isn't it? I mean, what do you make of what Bridget Phillips was trying to do as well? Because she's been getting a lot of heat from people like Catherine Birbalsingh. She was criticised by the former head of Ofsted the other day. She's being accused of just caving into the unions, not listening to teachers. What do you make of what she wants to do?
Well, I'm going to pretty much agree with what the criticisms are.
Yeah.
You know, she hasn't been in the job very long. I don't even know her background in teaching particularly. But I do know whenever we start messing around with the curriculum, there's only one loss, and that's standards.
Yeah.
You know, if you start, we've got the basics here of a good education system. Most of our teachers are excellent, actually. They know what they're doing. Once you start introducing change for change's sake, and I've had enough of that the last 40 years, you know, you need to ask her, why are you messing around with the curriculum? I could give her a few ideas how to make it more difficult, so we have better credibility, which leads to better jobs. We're back to that same old conversation, aren't we? Whereby let's make school important enough for kids to want to come here. Let's make school important enough so that their parents, some of them are quite feckless, I have to say, you know, understand that if they don't send their kids to school, there's going to be consequences. But more importantly, they will love their children. If they don't send their kids to school, if they don't get a good education, they're not going to be able to live very well. They're not going to be able to go on holiday, have the latest phone, have a car, which they seem to be able to afford on benefits. So I don't know what she's doing, Michael. It's not clear. I'm not interested in what the unions have to say. To be fair, I'm quite critical of them, but it is their remit is not to worry about our kids. Their remit is to worry about the adults and make sure they've got enough money and an easier time. You know, thank God there's no talk about teachers working from home, although we've had conversations before about it becoming a part-time bit.
Well, I mean, you say that, but there's loads of lecturers at university who don't go into class and they just do all their lectures online. It's unbelievable.
£9,000 a year. Most schools will be lucky to get £4,500, £5,000 per pupil. I'd like to know what goes on in universities. I really would. I know it's a great experience. I enjoyed it, etc. But I had to go to lectures. There was practical stuff going on. Now it seems the lectures are all online. They don't meet a lecturer if they want to avoid it. So I don't know what they're doing with the 9,000 because they're always pleading poverty as well.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's great to talk to you, Serge. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Serge Sefai, Executive Head Teacher at St Thomas the Apostle School. Makes an awful lot of sense. Let's talk to Nick, who's in Wiltshire, wants to talk about potholes. Nick, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, sir. What can I do for you? Where in Wiltshire are you?
Well, I'm in North Wiltshire, but I'm one of the portfolio holders on Wiltshire Council.
Okay.
That deals with flooding, and of course potholes occur a lot when you get flooding and in cold weather.
Right.
But the point I wanted to make to you, you can tell it's political season at the moment, or election season, because you've got Wiltshire Council invested £22 million in repairing potholes last year in the budget.
Right.
Liberal Democrats voted against it, and that included providing these road planing machines that do the job properly rather than just chuck a bit of tarmac in the hole.
Right.
We invested in 2 of those across the county. We want more, but, 2 to start with is good. Lib Dems voted against it, and in their election literature at the moment, they're saying, we will invest in roads. How hypocritical can you get?
Yeah, well, of course they're hypocrites. I mean, tell me about these machines. I mean, can they work sort of round the clock?
Well, they can, yes, but it's like anything. We do evening and late time on busy roads, so that it doesn't affect traffic. But they're like literally mini road planers, so we can do sections of road where there are 4 or 5 potholes. One of your callers earlier was mentioning that there was one pothole repaired and then next to it another one not. You don't see that in Wiltshire. We do it properly in Wiltshire, and on top of that, our budget this year has meant that we've only got a very small increase in council tax, completely against what everybody else around us are doing.
Well done.
Really well-run councilling.
Well done to you, Nick. Very good to see you and very good to hear you as well. Wiltshire's a great county. I've always loved it. Lived there for a while. Fantastic part of the world. Charlie says this, I totally agree with Ross Clark. It will bankrupt Britain, though. If the job centre started acting like a recruitment agency, then that would be more productive. In the past, I had to go on universal credit, and to be honest, it was really easy. Too easy. I was only entitled to a child payment. However, I had to do phone appointments, and one appointment, the work coach from the job centre said to me, can we make this quick as I've got a headache? And I've had a headache all day. Nothing about how is your job search going or if she knew of any jobs to apply for. Well, again, we've discovered yet another part of the country's economy and the state system that doesn't work, basically. Tanya says this from London. I live on the worst road in London. The potholes are a minimum of a foot deep. Our rubbish is no longer collected. Emergency vehicles can't even get down there. Crikey. What a nightmare. We're going to talk next to a man who got in touch with me last week, actually. Ted Phillips is his name. He's closing down his restaurant in Canterbury because he can't stand having to pay the national insurance that he would have to pay in April when it comes in from this government. So once again, Rachel Reeves is the destroyer of the economy, not the actual saviour of it. We'll find out exactly what's going on with Ted Phillips coming next.
one thing we do is talk openly and discuss policy. Anyone who wants to be a member of Reform can be. All views are tolerated. What I will say is we do not stand for racism. Some of the racism you have seen online recently towards our chairman is unacceptable, and Nigel Farage was right to call this out. And also some people that have very extreme views that frankly wouldn't have been welcome in any party. But the Reform Party is a professional party preparing for government. That starts with taking over councils in May and winning as many council seats as possible. And no one and nothing will distract the membership of this party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:53. I'm here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. Just before that, Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here to tell us what's coming up. Really funny show today, says Mark. How about Star Manuel 2, fracturing your foundations? Yeah, that could work. Very good. Ian from sunny Tenerife says it's not rocket science. Immigration goes through the roof, and so does everything else. Keep the good work up. Yeah, we'll try. Let's talk now to Ted Phillips. He's been listening to the show for many years. Closing down restaurants is what he's now finding himself having to do because of this Labour government and Rachel Reeves' remarkably tone-deaf policy about hospitality and the business that Ted's been in for many, many years. Ted, very good morning to you.
Mike, nice to speak to you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. You got in touch with me last week to say that that you were very sadly having to make a decision on a restaurant you've owned in Canterbury for a very, very long time. Tell us about it.
Well, actually, it's based at Canterbury Rugby Club.
Yeah.
I've done the catering there for 26 years now. And during COVID, we took the decision to expand and open it as a coffee shop restaurant as well.
Right.
Which was incredibly successful. We've hit kind of the top ratings on TripAdvisor and on the booking system apps and things. Right. It's been great fun. But we've just got to a stage now where since COVID, we've got through that stage, came out in a good place, but it's just gone downhill year after year. And in the last year, the government changes to national insurance coming in, the minimum wage, an absolute killer in hospitality because a lot of our staff are 18 to 21, which of course goes up from 7 quid to 10 quid an hour.
Right.
Virtually impossible to do. Right. Who's going to pay that? Do we charge that to the customers or do I take that hit?
Yes. And these kids, presumably the kids quite happy to work for the 7 quid an hour, and I'm sure they're happy if it goes up. But if it goes up, they've got no job. It's not an answer, is it?
That's the key. And so I've got a bit on match days when we're doing large catering, 250 covers.
Yeah.
We've got to a stage where we have 15 young kids, often their first jobs.
Yeah.
And all of those will be either moving on, or having to look for other jobs.
Yeah.
They only work once every 2 weeks or once a week. The better ones have learned how to kind of work the coffee machine and work in the restaurant. So we've progressed those staff as we go through it.
Right.
And it breaks my heart to actually see them or have to get rid of them in that way because the government will receive no money from my main staff.
Well, this is my point. So instead of actually getting more money coming in, a bit like the private schools, it's not worked for them because people like yourself are going to shut down. You're not going to give them what you were giving them. So you're going to, how much? I mean, without giving too much of your personal life away, how much tax would you have been giving them in the last, say, 24 months?
In total, if you add VAT onto what I'm buying for the restaurant, I'm over £100,000 I've paid to the government in the last year, each of the last years.
Right.
So I'm a wealth creator in many ways.
Yes. And this is the bit they don't get, isn't it? Because they think that they can just keep squeezing people. But in the end, people like yourself, fine upstanding member of the public, paying a lot of tax, you're just going, I've had enough. I'm not paying you anything.
Indeed. And I think you've got to the stage now where they don't know what to do. I don't think they have any business acumen whatsoever.
Right.
I think your last caller you were speaking to said the same about education. It's exactly the same. They have no common sense in that field.
Right.
And hospitality, I think, in the next couple of years, you're going to see prices creep up, because either I've got to take the hit,
right,
which my turnover increased last year, but my net profit halved.
Right.
And you can't actually keep going like that.
No, of course. And what about the numbers? What about the numbers of people? Because you're going to need chefs in the kitchen as well. And how many people are we talking about that won't be working for you?
I've got three or four full-time staff.
Yeah.
And then all those youngsters. So I'm over the national insurance threshold.
So 12 or so people?
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah.
At different levels.
Yeah.
For some of the older staff, I've got some fantastic staff, and they're going to be looking for jobs, which is horrible. Absolutely horrible. I think you've got a stage where spin doctors have run politics for quite a long time now, ever since Blair and that ginger depressive bloke, what was his name, Campbell.
Campbell, yeah.
I think they tell us consistently that we're all going to be better off all the time. Right. And I think it's more important to politicians these days for us to be told what they want you to believe, rather than actually doing what they say they're going to do.
Well, every time Starmer opens his mouth, he talks about putting more money in the pockets of working people. Well, hasn't worked in Canterbury, has it?
I cringe every time I hear that phrase, because you've got to remember also, people like myself who run businesses, we're also personal people as well.
Right.
So my personal food costs, my home energy costs, my council tax are going up exactly the same as everyone who works for a profession rather than self-employed. So I'm double worse off.
Yeah.
Not only is my business struggling, but I'm struggling as well.
Yeah.
So I've taken that decision that it's time to go.
Yeah.
Take a couple of old pensions and walk off into the horizon.
No, I know. Listen, it's such a shame. But listen, Ted, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for telling us the story, and thank you for sharing it with us. And good luck with the future as well. But this is what's happening. And that will be a microcosm of what's happening all over the country, right? People like Ted Phillips, decent, hard-working, tax-paying business people, shutting down their business because this bleeding government has completely and utterly kiboshed the economy. What a disgrace. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. The day is afoot. I'm looking out into what can only be described as a cloudless sky because we're moving into a warmer period. We've got a heat dome coming, ladies and gentlemen, and it looks like one of those beautiful blue skies that you don't see very often in this country. Not a cloud to be seen. So if you're out and about, enjoy it because it probably won't last, but it'll be here for a few days anyway. 15, 16 degrees coming in the next couple of days, we are told. Lots more for us to do this morning. Apparently, Keir Starmer's refusing to back down on the benefits row, despite the fact that many members of the Labour government and many members of the Labour Party, indeed, are against him cutting back on benefits, particularly if he's going to use the money to fund peacekeeping troops being sent into Ukraine, which most people are not very keen on. We've been talking about new checks coming in on sickness claimants. That's the front page of the Times. We've got Jürgen as well from GB Energy. He's back. He's been meeting some people and telling us all how great GB Energy is going to be for us. Still without an office, still without a plan, still without anything to sell us or anything to buy, and still without any point to him whatsoever. We'll be finding out what that is all about. Also, Isabel Oakeshott in this hour, Talks International editor. We'll be putting to her some of the more ridiculous things we've been doing this morning, including discovering that Labour seem to want to put sort of soft porn music behind every single video that they put out. Confessions of a Toolmaker is one suggestion from Rob. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a voice note from John in Texas.
Hi, Mike. This is John from Texas. The government should reinstate national service for all these people that are able-bodied but not working and put them to work filling potholes. Great show.
I mean, thank you, John from Texas. Yesterday we had somebody listening in from Maui in Hawaii. We've got people in Dubai, we've got people in Hong Kong, we've got people in Australia, we've got people all over the world. John from Texas, thank you very much indeed. Andrew Bowie, MP, is coming up. He's the Shadow Energy Secretary. We've been asking him about Jürgen and GB Energy. Also, of course, we've been talking about potholes. Massive, massive story. Potholes are getting bigger. The time taken to fix them is getting longer. 17 billion quid is what we're now being told is going to be needed to fix them all. And it could take as many as 12 years to actually get it all done. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. 0344 499 1000. Also, the amount of government waste is being exposed by the Sun this morning. They've been spending £675 million on civil service credit cards. Why? You might well ask. Well, I don't know the answer to that. It seems remarkable, doesn't it? Absolutely unbelievable. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Send us a voice note. Give us a call. Send us a tweet to at talkTV. Or you can text us, of course, to 87222. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Got some great messages coming in as well. This one from Kevin in East Sussex. Why is it, Mike, that when driving through France from one end to the other, there are no potholes and no signs that potholes have been repaired? Why don't French roads suffer from potholes? Very good question. Here's one from Warwick in Devon. Morning, Mike. Excellent show as ever. Serge Sefai has just spoken more common sense in 5 minutes than the entire Labour mob have since they came into government. Well, this is the thing. There are people in this country who are very sensible. There are people in this country who know about education. Most of them work in the business. There are people who know about hospitality. Most of them work in the business. We talk to them. There are people who know about medicine. They work in the business of medicine. But somehow none of these government officials ever speak to them. It is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. And one of the things that's going to be a big bugbear for Labour in this very week is the whole business of PIP, the payments that are made to people who are supposedly not capable of working. And if they are capable of working, they need help with getting to work. Mike, I love your show, says Karen. I know of someone who receives PIP and spends his day smoking weed. He has never been interviewed as his girlfriend answers the questions for him over the phone as to why he deserves to receive this benefit. How can anyone make a proper assessment if they never actually see the claimant? No wonder we're in the state we are in. Thanks for the sanity every morning. Well, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's talk to Andrew Bowie, Shadow Energy Secretary, because much to talk about, Andrew. Very good morning to you. Let's kick off. We're going to get to the energy business with GB Energy and all the rest of it, but let me just kick off at the moment with the Liz Kendall story. She's going to attempt this afternoon, I believe, to explain how she's going to take money away from people who are not disabled enough. It's a problem that obviously became bigger while you guys were in government. But she's going to have a problem, isn't she, trying to remove money from people who say they need it?
Yeah, I think she is, Mike. I think what we're going to hear today is a pale comparison to...
The sound will come back to a second. Let's go to Isabel.
Yeah, we've got no sound on you there, Andrew. We're going to have to come back to you in a moment. Can we have a bit of music, please? Because I want to introduce Isabel Oakeshott to this particular part of the show. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is the music that Labour decided was a good piece of music to put underneath one of the Keir Starmer videos that went out. And I'm sorry to have to do this to you, Isabel, but I'm suggesting this reminds me, or reminds a lot of people, of a sort of 1970s porn film. I don't know why they've done it. I don't know why they insist on putting music under it. A lot of people have suggested Confessions of a Toolmaker. Rachel does accounts, all that sort of thing. But it's mad, isn't it? What is this with the new theme that politicians need to put music to every single video that they put out?
Well, I kind of liked the Friends Without Benefits one. That was the best one. Although
that was good. Yeah, that was good.
The way the Labour debate is going, it's going to be Friends with extra benefits, I think, after, many of the Labour backbenchers have had their way. They want extra benefits, not less benefits. Nothing's going to dent my mood this morning, Mike. I'm here in London. I'm looking out over this beautiful blue sky. I can see a Union Jack fluttering, and over to my right, I can see the Houses of Parliament. And it's only when I think of what is actually going on inside that damn place that I start getting a noise again.
Yes.
And today there's so much to be wound up about, as usual, whether it's potholes or whether it's this nonsense with the PIP disability benefits or whether it's Motability scheme. On all of these, whenever we talk about these on our shows, on your show, on Kevin O'Sullivan's show, on Ian Collins' show, we get so many people messaging in saying, they are people who really need help. We had yesterday somebody on JK's show who's been a nurse for 50 years or near enough, worked all her life. She said, you've worked the best part of 50 years. She now needs very briefly a bit of help on the benefit system and is struggling to get it. And yet you've got all these people who are absolutely taking the proverbial, and the whole system is just completely skew-if, isn't it?
It totally is. Absolutely right. We're going to come back to it, Isabel. I'm sorry to say we've just got to have a quick word with Andrew Bowie, who's now got his sound up and running, I think, on College Green, Shadow Energy Secretary. Andrew, let's try again. I think we've got it fixed.
Yeah, Mike, I've now been accused of not being able to be heard before, so hopefully that's sorted.
Yes, I think so. Let me ask you about Jürgen Meyer. We've got a short clip I want to play to you. Yeah. He's the head of GB Energy. I don't know what he's for. I don't know what the company that he runs is for. I don't know what he does for a living. Let's have a look.
Great British Energy stems from one very simple idea, that British people should have a right to own and benefit from our own natural energy resources. This is why Great British Energy is 100% owned by the British people, for the British people. Our goal is to help communities and bill payers reap the benefits of clean, secure, homegrown energy. Our journey to energy security, clean power, and net zero is truly on path, and we at Great British Energy are here to accelerate that exciting journey.
Yeah, I mean, when he says we at GB Energy, there's only one of him. There isn't anybody, there is no we at GB Energy, is there? What are they doing?
I've no idea, but Mike, the funniest thing about that video is he's a chairman of a company supposedly based in Aberdeen who himself is based in Manchester, where the video was filmed in London. The whole thing's farcical. Nobody knows what GB Energy actually is. It isn't great, it isn't British, and it's not going to produce any energy. It's why we voted against it in the House of Commons. It's going to cost £8 billion at a time when we're scrabbling to find the money to build the tanks, the drones, and get more soldiers, sailors and airmen into the place that we need to become more secure as a country, and it's going to do nothing to improve our energy security or drive down bills. So the whole thing is completely farcical. It's a white elephant, and as you say, only one person employed. and he can only commit to employing 200 people over the next 5 years. Not exactly the transformational entity that Ed Miliband would like us to think it's going to be.
No, exactly right. And I mean, as far as energy prices go, you know, last time he was interviewed, I think the only time he's ever been interviewed, he said, well, it's nothing to do with us what the prices are, that's fixed by the government. We were told by this government that not only would they price cap the energy bills that we get, so they would never go up, they would be frozen, and we would also save 300 quid. Well, neither of those things have turned out to be true. We've got another £111 pay rise going up in April, and there seems no end in sight. The energy sort of policy in this country seems to be costing us more and more money.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike, you're not wrong. We were told by the Labour Party in the run-up to the last election that as a result of GB Energy being created and other policies that they were going to come forth with, that we'd see energy bills reduced by £300 by the end of the decade. But as you say, energy bills are continuing to go up. And at the same time, we're becoming more reliant on overseas interests to keep the lights on in this country. I mean, look where Ed Miliband is this morning, surrendering British energy sovereignty to the People's Republic of China. That's farcical, it's nonsensical, it's not in the interests of the British people, which is why when Kemi stands up later today, she'll be setting out a programme, a policy programme that will be a sensible approach to energy moving forward, a conservative approach, and hopefully that will win back the trust of the British people in the next few years.
Is it too little too late, though, for the Tories to now say net zero is not achievable?
Well, I hope not. And she's not saying it's not achievable. What she's saying is that setting arbitrary targets and dates is not in the best interests of this country. It's leading us to be more reliant on overseas interests, and it's driving up bills. And neither of those things are acceptable to us as a Conservative Party, who are renewing our policy platform and are beginning the hard work of developing the policies needed to answer the big questions facing the country today. Yeah,
well, I mean, you've had more chance of getting re-elected if you actually said it's not achievable, we're not going to do it anymore. But Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Let's get back in with Isabel Oakeshott, because I'm sure she, like me, will be slightly frustrated by what we just heard there. You know, I mean, either net zero is a thing or it's not. You can't just go, well, it's not achievable this way, so we'll have to achieve it a different way. How about you just don't bother achieving it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like Kemi Badenoch to go further. I mean, I thought that minister, that shadow minister, was a bit better than the average Tory shadow minister.
Yes.
He was brisk, wasn't he? I quite like the cut of his jib. But let's not be deceived by presentation here. Zero was that agenda was rolled out and rolled out in red carpet style under the Tories, and particularly under Boris Johnson. And it's a bit late in the day now, just because they're massively on the back foot, and Reform has been saying for quite a long time now, I mean several years actually, long before people were really giving the party much attention, that net zero is a giant con and totally misconceived and is not going to do anything other than harm to our country. Oh, now the Tories are, oh, well, I think we'll just copy that policy and start saying we need to row back a bit on net zero. Too little, too late. And as for that Great British Energy video, what a farce, you know, to announce that we're setting up this Great British Energy thing because we believe that British people should own our energy resources. Well, what about fracking? You know, we've got enormous amounts of energy wealth under our feet that this government won't touch because of, you guessed it, net zero. And then there's all the oil and gas fields that they're not exploring because net zero. So the whole thing, people shouldn't be taken in by it. This is theatrics, nothing more.
But also, do you not get slightly as well frustrated, and I know it's not really a word that covers what you and I feel about most of these things, that here we've got, you know, on the one hand, you know, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves banging on about growth and talking about re-examining the oil fields in the North Sea and drilling for more oil. Meanwhile, they want more runways, they want more cars on the road, they want more growth. And Ed Miliband's over in bloody China, sort of sucking up to the Chinese regime about trying to get them to sell us more wind farm.
And I don't like any of our ministers sucking up to the Chinese regime, because there is an absolute naivety about that. The Chinese regime does not wish us well, and any deal that they strike with us will undoubtedly be heavily advantageous to them and not to us. And in this country, we spend so many of the woke left spend their time hand-wringing about Britain's colonial past. The Chinese regime is basically carrying out the modern day equivalent of colonialism across the developing world. And I don't hear the woke left wringing their hands about that. You know, Ed Miliband, if he were consistent, shouldn't be associating with these people on so many levels.
I know, it's madness, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. But I suppose what's even more ridiculous is that the left hand doesn't seem to know what the right hand is doing. Same with, you know, Angela Rayner, on the one hand, wants all these rights for workers. You know, meanwhile, Rachel Reeves comes and goes, oh, no, we can't do any of that because we need growth. We must look after the poor and the sick and the elderly. Oh, no, we can't do that, says Liz Kendall. No, we've got to get rid of some of the people who aren't disabled enough. We'll stop giving them any money.
Well, when I wonder whether this country is past saving, you know, is there any hope for us? Can we actually get ourselves out of this mess? I come back to the fundamental reality, which is that this administration under Labour is so woeful and so unable to tackle the single biggest problems that we're facing, whether it's the net zero, whether it's the ballooning energy bill, which they're all going to argue amongst themselves and won't end up cutting or making any real difference, whether it's the state of the economy or, number one, the disaster that is mass uncontrolled immigration. This government isn't going to sort any of that. It's going to get a lot worse. And I think in a few years' time, we are going to reach a breaking point. And that is the one thing that may actually achieve the revolution that is now needed in these policy areas if we're to save Britain. Yeah, I think so, because everywhere you go, I mean, we did this last week, I'm not sure if we spoke about it, but, you know, the state of Britain's, you know, kind of towns in terms of the numbers of horrible bits of fly tipping that go on, the piles and piles of rubbish that are building up, the fact that in Birmingham the bin men have gone on strike because of so many rats that they don't feel safe, you know, just generally the filth of the country, and it seems to be getting worse. The other, you know, various problems that the country has that, as you and I say quite often, puts it on its knees. But there's still some great things about this country, and there are still some great people in it. There's still some wonderful, you know, authentic, you know, forward-looking people. But I just spoke to a businessman from Canterbury who's been running his restaurant for 25 years. He's shutting it down now because he's finally had enough, because he doesn't want to pay his staff the money that he's now supposed to pay them. He employs loads of young kids, 18 to 21-year-olds, on minimum wage. He's got to pay them extra £3 an hour if he has to keep them on, and the extra VAT prices, the extra national insurance. He's just chucking it in. And isn't that a terrible indictment of what these idiots are doing to the economy? It is so sad. You know, small businesses are the lifeblood of any economy, you know, from sole operators up to those who are employing, you know, 5, 10, 20, 30 people. You know, we need that. That is the foundation of a healthy economy. And we need to have a culture that embraces the hustle, a culture in which young people are not thinking, well, you know, actually just be a bit easier just to take benefits. You know, I can still get a, you know, little holiday to, you know, somewhere in the Spanish Costas within my benefits. Right. We need young people to be thinking so much bigger than that, you know, about a world of opportunities, about what they can earn for themselves and the future they can build. And somehow that culture is evaporating, and that is so terrifying. And it's evaporating because we are allowing it to evaporate. The state is not only enabling but almost encouraging it. It's condoning a life on benefits for young people who have their whole futures ahead of them. And it is an utter tragedy that they should be allowed to resign themselves to what they might at this stage in their early 20s consider to be a nice, easy option. And then guess what? They get to 30s, 40s, trying to have children and realising that actually, you know, whilst benefits might be easy handouts, they're not going to get you the nice house, they're not going to allow you to have adventures or give you that sense of fulfilment.
No, I mean, I wonder sometimes if it's our fault as parents that, you know, these kids have grown up in a world which is so cosseted and so comfortable. And I'm not obviously talking about every child, because a lot of children come from less well-off backgrounds, but the sort of the middle classes, if you like, the Daily Mail readership of this world. You know, we've given the kids so much that they're kind of expecting it. You know, I was looking at the piece in the Mail today about the last Battle of Britain pilot, John Paddy Hemingway, joined the RAF in 1938. He was 21 when he was flying missions. And I know that people will say, oh, yeah, jingoistic, you know, they always talk about the past, you know. This guy was 21 years old. I've got a son who's 20, and he flew raid after raid after raid, Battle of Britain pilots, shot down 4 times. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody like that anymore.
Well, I think that there is. I think there absolutely is. But we need more of that. And young people have to be made to try, and they have to be hungry.
Yeah.
I almost mean literally hungry for success.
Yeah.
If you're always given handouts, why do you need to try? And this is a problem right through the social strata. And I see it amongst wealthier people, that they are too good to their kids. Don't give your kids handouts. It's no better than the state giving your kids handouts, because then they don't have to make their own way in life. And if that sounds a bit strident and a bit tough, I
don't think it does.
It's the best way for young people to build their own futures. They have to feel the fear that you and I have every day of, well, actually, the bills are pouring in, and if I keep trying, I'm not going to be able to pay it.
Right.
You know, and just sitting, getting handouts from mum and dad or getting handouts from the state, then on you drift, you know, having little pleasures where they come, a bit of Deliveroo, a bit of Uber Eats, watch some more Netflix, maybe go shopping. These are sort of okay pleasures, but they don't compete with the thrill of being able to explore the world, to build a successful business, hire people, be in charge of something.
Yeah, absolutely right. And just, as you say, the hunger to do well, the hunger to do something rather than to do nothing and to sit around on benefits. I don't understand that mentality. I never have. I've never done it. I've never wanted to do it. You know, I'm very proud of the fact that, you know, and this is not a party political broadcast on behalf of Mike Graham, but I've only ever been a net contributor to this government and to every other government that went before. And when I lived in America, it was the same. You know, I put a load of money into it, I put a load of effort into it, and I regard myself as a success as a result of that. And I don't want their money. You know, somebody told me the other day, well, you'll be eligible for a pension soon. And I'm like, well, fine, give it to somebody else. You know, it's almost like, and I'm very, very fortunate. And I'm, you know, as I say, I'm not trying to be a big shot here. But, you know, I'm very proud of what I've done in my life. And I would want my children all to do the same.
Well, I know that I understand that your children are doing exactly that. And, you know, there used to be a culture where people were ashamed to claim unemployment benefit. And perhaps we went a bit too far with that. And, you know, there were tragic stories of people that had worked hard all their life, fell on hard times and were too ashamed to ask for help. But now we've gone full way. The pendulum has swung far too far in the other direction, in which it's become a lifestyle choice. And for all the reasons you and I have just discussed, that's not doing anyone any favours. And when you look at the most vibrant economies, you know, I talk a lot about the Emirates, but give another example, Singapore. Yeah. Everybody has to pay into their own kind of insurance pot. So they work, and as they work, they pay a bit like national insurance. Right. When you take time out, when you need, you know, to have unemployment benefit, it comes out of your own pot. Right. That really concentrates the mind, doesn't it? Because you've only got what's in your pot that you actually run through. That seems to me the kind of model that we should be looking into. It's time we looked at more international comparisons of how things are done, because what we're doing sure as hell isn't working. No, you're absolutely right. Well, let's get it working. Hopefully we can get it working. Good to talk to you as ever, Isabel Oakeshott. Thank you very much indeed. Talks International editor there. Let's get a voice note from Kelvin. Morning, Mike. How come everybody's on about, you know, people with disabilities claiming this, that and the other? And, you know, and we've got to cut this, we've got to cut that. Hardly anybody's saying anything about the migrants bill, all the money that they're getting. Each one gets about $3,000 a bloody month, you know. But they aren't having theirs cut, are they? It looks like strip the benefits from the people that really need it and give it to the young, fit, fighting men. That's how this looks, you know, and you can't hide the fact that that's what's going on. Yeah. It's a good point, Kelvin, and very well made. And in fact, I'll put it to any Labour candidate who comes on here, any Labour government minister who comes on here, and say, what are you doing about that? Because that money is still being poured into the benefits bill for migrants every single day, every single hour of every single day. Treacle in Bridgend says this, Mike, I had a text from my GP saying I hadn't been for over 3 years, and if I've moved to get a new GP, is it going to be like dentists? If you don't go, you get kicked off the list.
We'll try and get a bleeding appointment. That would help. What a crook. Or a crock, I should say. And one from Paul who says, can anybody tell us anything beneficial to the UK and our defence of the Chagosians that will come from giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius and paying them billions for the pleasure? Absolutely unbelievable. Please tell us there is somebody in government with brains and common sense to stop this nonsense. Well, they seem to be very keen on actually passing it over to them. I don't know why. Adventures of a Champagne Socialist is one suggestion for a film title. Keith goes longer, faster and harder than ever before. That sounds unlikely. That's definitely fiction, that one. This is Talk.
Welcome to my beautiful home. What do you mean it's not my home? Every morning I pick beautiful flowers from my beautiful garden and I feed them to my beautiful children. So what if you haven't got a garden? I haven't really got any children. I hate bees. Get me out of this bee suit now. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle because it's Meghan Sussex now. It's Meghan Sussex. Meghan Sussex. Meghan Sussex.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:30 already. Goodness gracious me, we're out of here in half an hour's time. And, of course, Julie Hartley-Brewer will be taking over. Steve from Cambridge says, Mike, what creams my corn over this Chagos deal is Chagosian people are British. So why is our useless king saying nothing about this? Well, that's one good point. And Julia from Mansfield says, Mike, I must say I'm loving the way the show's going this morning. The porn theme is brilliant. Makes the change to have a really good laugh. Keep up the good work. Can we have a bit of the music? Can we play a little blast of that? One suggestion that's come from somebody I can't name is, how about Coalition of the Willy? Yeah, why not? The devil in Miss Reeves, says Vinny. And release the sausages, says Mr. Glenn. Thank you very much indeed for that. Keep them coming. Let's talk to Tom Walls. Oh, no, we've got a voice note from David on Labour. Go ahead.
Morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Great sunny day as well. Socialism basically always ends up this way. They're just big six former ideas like GB Energy, huge windmills, new fiscal bullet points, smash the boats, concrete the wells. But it always ends up with the pigs sticking their snouts in the trough. As for Labour Party porn, they are living it. Free clothes, free international travel, raising taxes, now spending on the company credit card. Have a good day. David in the Cotswolds.
David in the Cotswolds, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's talk to Tom Waters, Associate Director of the IFS, because front page of the Times today, checks on sick benefit claimants to increase. The most severely disabled may be exempt from the new Liz Kendall work and pensions rules, but basically people with permanent or degenerative conditions may never have to be reassessed. But as part of a promise to try and save £1 billion, ministers are setting out plans today to deal with an ever-spiralling bill. How's it exactly going to work? The Institute for Fiscal Studies, Tom Waters, is here. Tom, very good morning. So, I mean, how is it going to work? I mean, I don't know what Liz Kendall's going to be able to pull out of the hat. Several rabbits, I would imagine. It's going to be difficult, this, isn't it?
I mean, certainly the government finds itself in a very difficult position. We've seen really significant increases in spending on these benefits, disability and incapacity benefits, since the pandemic. And, you know, it's no secret that the government's finances aren't in the happiest state ever. And so they're looking to make some savings. And of course, that means taking cash away from people who are on these benefits and are disabled.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, when you start to try and sort of make arguments as a politician, and I'm not against the arguments, because we've spent the last 2 days having conversations about how many people are in receipt of some of these benefits who shouldn't be, but as soon as you start trying to address that, and as soon as you start bringing in, I mean, I remember they did this a few years ago. They brought in one of these third-party organisations who were quite hard on people, and they managed to get quite a lot of it wrong. I think they were based in Northern Ireland. I can't remember their name now. And they were sort of chopping and slicing people's benefits and taking them away because they thought that they couldn't, you know, supply enough information and all that kind of thing. As soon as you start trying to kind of separate people out, it becomes massively problematic, doesn't it?
I think that's right, is when you're looking to kind of tighten the system, make it more difficult to qualify for these benefits in the way you say, naturally that's going to be, you know, I guess the goal is to take it away from people who you know, perhaps are less needy than others. But of course, these assessments are definitely not perfect, and so any reform isn't going to be perfect either. And that means we'll end up taking cash away from people who are considerably more needy.
Right, because when you look at the increases in things like people claiming for, you know, not so much, you know, physical disability as mental disability, claiming for anxiety, claiming for ADHD, many more people now being diagnosed with that, many more people taking medication for it, many more people saying that as a result of that they need this benefit, that benefit. I mean, it's a bit like trying to go after people who've got a bad back, isn't it, in the end?
Yeah, and a lot of the increase, more than half the increase we've seen over the past 5 years has come from people claiming for mental health problems. And I think an important part of the context here is these benefits were really designed and developed in a world where really it was largely for physical health conditions. But over time, the caseload has shifted more and more to be about mental health. And, you know, these assessments were really kind of thought up as being something to really figure out whether or not you had a physical problem.
Yeah, and also from a sort of sociological point of view, and I don't know whether you wish to address this point, but the Britain that was around 30 or 40 years ago, and we were talking about this just a moment ago with Isabel Oakeshott, where people were kind of ashamed to go on benefits, where they really thought that they must get a job, no matter what it was, they should actually work and contribute to society. That whole ethos, the work ethic, seems to have disappeared. You know, Daily Mail had a piece yesterday on the front page saying the end of the work ethic, because so many young people now are saying, well, we'd rather not really have a job that's particularly stressful, we'd rather not have a job that keeps us away from our house for 5 days a week, we'd rather not actually work at all, some of us, we'd rather just go on benefits.
I think, you know, these things kind of seem to come in waves a little bit. If you went back to the early 90s, there are actually a lot of people on these benefits then, and then there was a reform to really try and get those numbers down, and then, you know, we've sort of seen things going back up again in the last few years. But I think you raised an important point about the age difference, because historically, often these benefits were targeted at people who were a bit older and were quite close to state pension age anyway, maybe get it for the last 5 or 10 years of their working life. Whereas it is becoming more common now for younger people to be on it. So if you look at 20-year-olds, for example, about 7% of 20-year-olds are on disability or incapacity benefits today, which is quite a significant increase, even from just a few years.
It really is. Listen, I don't know what we're going to do about it, but we'll watch with interest this afternoon to see what Liz Kendall has to say. Tom Waters, thank you very much indeed, Associate Director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. This from somebody who doesn't give a name. Mike, I know a bloke who owns his own business with 2 taxis. His wife works in a chemist and both get PIPs. He's got a contract to take a kid to the Lake District on a Monday and pick him up again on a Friday. He gets 670 quid for it, and half the time the kid doesn't want to go, and he still gets paid both ways. Gary says, morning Mike, the trouble is many people see what the taxes are being spent on and think, sod it, why should I pay taxes for that? Immigrants in 4 or 5-star hotels, free driving lessons, etc., chucking money away all over the world on vanity projects as well. Personally, at 63, I've never been out of work and I've never claimed. I brought my children up with the same work ethic as well. We now have 3 generations working within the family business. And that's great, and that's exactly how it should be, but unfortunately not everybody is. Hilton's got this. Mike, how about Last Tango in Parliament or 50 Shades of Sue? Not bad. Let's get a voice note from Lisa.
Morning, Mike. It's Lisa from Canterbury. I had to come in on the conversation about university, obviously keeping certain things anonymous, but I was at a particular university last year and talking to one of the girls who has been at the university a couple of years. And I said, what are you going to do when you leave? And she said, well, I'm not going to do anything because I suffer from anxiety. And I thought, well, OK, so you've racked up, all this debt. Right. No intentions of working. You don't seem very anxious to me sitting there and planning parties with your friends all weekend. I mean, the mindset's madness.
It really is. It's incredible. Lisa, thanks for that. Very, very interesting. This is the thing, and I suppose if they are not planning to get a job, if they are planning to just stay on benefits, they'll never have to repay the loan. So that's even more trouble for the government, because they're loaning all this money out because they're giving it away basically to all the institutions of education who are creaming it in, paying their vice-chancellors £600,000-700,000 a year. And what are we getting out of it? Massive debt. Thanks very much indeed. This from Annette in Sandwell. How about Keir's guide to the Starmer Sutra? Oh, I don't even want to think about that. And Mark in Selby, this is one for the pensioners who might remember this movie with Jack Nicholson. How about the focus group always knocks twice? It's 9:39. Coming up, we're going to talk about pharmacists. Apparently thousands of independent pharmacists are advised to go on strike, I think. Crikey, we don't want them to go on strike as well, do we? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:41. This is a good one, this one, Robbo in Glasgow. Glasgow City Council's answer to Pothole seems to be turning half the roads in the city into cycle lanes, therefore only half the roads can be driven on, resulting in massive traffic jams everywhere. I know. Listen, my mate Donald McLeod tells me this. Glasgow absolutely screwed by the City Council. And this from Bev in Hampshire. Thanks for a great show. You always cheer up my day. School attendance. Pupils get used to being at home when schools locked the gates for months on end during the lockdown. Then when they did finally get back to teaching, they went on strike. It's made children believe that their education is not really that important. I think that's true. Absolutely right. Going on strike is never a good idea in my view. But guess what? The pharmacists of this country are thinking about doing it. Let's talk to Torin Govind, our favourite pharmacist. I hope you're not going on strike, Torin, are you?
So no one's going on strike, Mike. Okay, really? I promise.
Right.
The National Pharmacy Association is advising its 6,000 members to reduce opening hours and services because they think they've been left with very little choice. And to be honest, I can understand the predicament. We've got employers' national insurance rates going up, the national living wage, but we've still got no clarity on the funding for pharmacies at the moment. We are still flailing around in the dark, but we're still been providing all these services.
So what funding do you get currently then?
So at the moment, for example, when you go in and then you hand in your prescription, we don't get paid that £9.90 that you paid for your prescription, but we get a set fee per item that we are paid, and it's I don't think you can buy an ice cream for it, Mike. That's the sum of it.
But what if it was for free prescription? You still get the money, right?
So it's nothing to do with whether it's paid or free by you as a patient. It's to do with how they fund us, and we get paid per item that we dispense.
Right.
But what we also know is we have to buy the medication to get it into the pharmacy, and only once we've bought it and given it to you do we get paid for that medication. And a lot of the medications we're not getting paid the price that it costs us to get in. That means that pharmacy owners are funding the NHS. So they are.
But isn't that like every shop, though? I mean, if you're running a shop, right, and you're selling cans of beans, you buy the can of beans, you put it on the shelf, you don't get that money back until you sell the can of beans. The same thing, isn't it?
Well, the can of beans, let's just go back a moment here. 90% of the pharmacy's income is from the NHS. So it's not like there's other sources that we can go to, other markets, really. And also, nobody's setting the prices for those can of beans as to what we can sell them at. So this is an agreement with the NHS as to what they will pay us. So we are buying items in, for example, let's take your can of beans example. We could be spending £1 to buy the can of beans, but the NHS and the government is saying we're only going to pay you 50p for the can of beans. Well, that's not fair, is it? Especially when
Doesn't sound like it. But then, also pharmacies also sell loads of other things which have got nothing to do with the NHS, presumably. I mean, you sell, I don't know, jars of Vaseline. You sell, Strepsils. You sell, without wishing to give too many adverts for you sell shampoo. You sell all sorts of stuff.
Well, that's because we've been forced to do that because of the
but that's what isn't that what the customer wants, though? The customer goes into a chemist and expects to be able to buy stuff you can buy in a chemist. You wouldn't just go in and go, well, I need to go to the pharmacy counter and that's all I'm doing.
Well, if you think about it, Mike, the services that we provide in terms of you might experience the Pharmacy First scheme, for example, there's no bargaining power there. We get paid what we are told. Now, we are yet to receive confirmation of funding for 2024 and 2025 or 25 and 26. Very few people would work in an environment where you just don't know what the funding situation is going to be. But back to this, what's going to happen now is they are encouraging their members to reduce their hours.
So what does that mean? You're going to shut early?
Yeah, so instead of saying 9 till 11 o'clock at night, you'll be working 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, for example. So 40 hours a week. But we know that.
Well, a lot of people do that anyway, don't they? I mean, all the pharmacies I go to are not open until 11 o'clock at night.
That's because of the underfunding. A lot of pharmacies.
Well, no, they're just in a shopping centre which shuts at whatever time, so they close at 5.
Well, not all pharmacies are in a shopping centre, Mike.
No, I know that. All I'm saying is that the ones that I go to, which are in generally South East London, you know, for a variety of things. Sometimes I go for a prescription, sometimes I don't. You know, they sell a whole variety of all sorts of different things. I can buy razors there, I can buy shaving cream, I can buy perfume if I want, I can buy a toothbrush. You know, they make a living, I presume, because of all of the stuff that they do, and they don't stay open until 11 o'clock. I can't go there after 5 in most cases.
Yeah, but a lot of that has happened because of the underfunding slowly. So we've also had closures. So there's the lowest number of pharmacies in England now, 10,500, which has gone down in recent years. To me, though, this is about patience. When do most people want to go and access a pharmacy? At lunchtime and at 6 o'clock when they finish work. So people are potentially not going to have access at those times where they might need
I went to try and get something from a pharmacist once at lunchtime, and the pharmacist was at lunch, and I couldn't get it.
I've got to eat, Mike, I've got to eat. But I tell you something.
Well, we've all got to eat, but, you know, you can still work at the same time.
Well, most people get, you know, an unpaid 20-minute
I don't think you're making a very good case here, Torin. I mean, presumably, if you weren't making any money, you wouldn't run a pharmacy, right? So you must be making some money, otherwise you're insane.
Well, Mike, a lot of pharmacies owners...
Why would you work in a job where you don't make any money?
I think we're all questioning that, Mike, to be honest. That the question is here, well, how is this going to impact patients? You might have fewer deliveries, so that your pharmacy might say, we're not going to be able to deliver to you. They might also stop some of the services that they provide in protest almost about how this is being treated.
Yeah, but, you know, I don't think people are going to be very sympathetic to you, is all I can say. Because all they would say is just, look, if you want to run a pharmacy and you can't make it, you know, monetarily viable, then maybe you need to do something else. I don't think you're going to get much sympathy from anyone.
That's why a lot have closed down, Mike. That's why you know, the service is taking longer. You see more queues nowadays, and we were the only people open during COVID. You could only go to your supermarket and your pharmacy during COVID, you'll remember. I don't think anyone would want to do this. You know, this is a very much a last resort, and we've been warning about this for ages. And we've also been dealing with medicine shortages, Mike, which haven't really got any better.
And whose fault is that?
Well, look, how many times have we spoken about medicine shortages? Nobody's listening to us.
One of the reasons there's a shortage of medicine for ADHD is there's so many people on it. There's too many people getting it.
I don't think it's necessarily because there's so many people getting it.
Yeah, it is. No, it's definitely that.
It's also about it being an unattractive, you know, place for medicines to be sold. They'd rather go to other markets than sell it to the UK. I think that's another factor. Also, economically, we don't have a lot of homegrown medication here. We don't really grow medication. We don't really manufacture medicines here like we used to. So these are all difficulties, and global conflicts as well have added to the issues.
Global conflicts? Crikey. Now we're really hitting at ground zero time. Listen, I hope you don't go on strike, Torin, because it sounds like a strike to me, even though you say it's not. But nice to talk to you again. Thank you. I don't make any sense out of that at all. I mean, that is completely mad, isn't it? Maybe we'll do a whole show on pharmacies. When was the last time you got what you wanted in a pharmacy and you didn't have to queue? Or was it the global conflict that got in the way of it? Yeah, sorry, I just want a couple of aspirins. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm in the wrong job. I can't take any of this stuff seriously anymore. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Anyway, it's 10 to 10. It's time.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've got this. Why are you picking a fight with the pharmacist, who seems a very reasonable person? Well, no. I'm sorry, you know, a pharmacy is a shop, as far as I'm concerned. It happens to have a pharmacist in it who can give you some other stuff apart from what you can get in a shop, right? You can buy shampoo, you can buy... In some pharmacies, you can buy sandwiches, right? I've seen them. I don't know what's going on today. This from John, who says, pharmacies have always shut at 6 p.m. in line with GP practices. You've always had an emergency pharmacy, which is listed as to its location. Sadly, these youngsters haven't lived. Do pharmacists have to buy only the medicines that the NHS decided which supplier they can buy from instead of being able to shop around? That's the porn music in the background, by the way, if you're wondering why. I've just, maybe what we should have is just music underneath everything we do, a bit like Labour, you know, so just play some porn music underneath every announcement that we make. I mean, they play it, yeah. They've actually, I think some places have got their own DJs, haven't they? Some pharmacies. I think they have. It's true. I mean, I'm not picking a fight with pharmacists. I just think it's nonsensical to be told, you know, we've got real problems, you know, global conflicts, you know, supply chain problems. Kathy's in South Wales, wants to talk about Motability. Hello, Kathy.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
We're good. Yes, my husband, he was involved in a head-on collision October the 15th, 2022.
Right.
Yeah, the guy was coming up and hit my husband on my husband's side of the road head-on.
He's on the wrong side of the road?
Yes, he wasn't avoiding potholes. He was actually overtaking a van.
Okay.
And he just overtook the van and went straight into my husband.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And what happened to your husband?
Well, as it happened, it was the car that saved my husband.
Right.
It was a Toyota RAV4. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all 5 airbags went off, so you can imagine all the smoke that was in the car.
Yeah, I bet.
The people in the cars behind him were able to open up my husband's car because he was really panicking now because he thought, God, you know, the car's going to catch on fire. So he got out. Severe whiplash.
Right.
He had only 20% movement in his neck.
Right.
Anyway, but the other guy, they were both tested on scene.
Right.
Obviously, my husband was negative. The guy did test for cocaine.
Oh, did he?
Cannabis.
Right.
And it seems as though he was known to the police to be a drug addict.
Okay.
The car he was driving, I think it was a Ford Fiesta, was brand new.
Right. And it was you say it's a Motability car?
It's a Motability car. Now, how on earth he was able to get a Motability car, I don't know.
Right.
The guy was going to plead innocent.
All right. And he was prosecuted, was he?
He was prosecuted, yes.
Right.
But because my husband's car did have dash cam footage on it, but, you know, he couldn't, there was no way was he innocent of such a crime.
No, of course.
What do they say now? The penalty doesn't fit the crime because it certainly didn't fit his.
And did he get sentenced to something?
He did get sentenced for... they couldn't... when he went in, he was actually admitted into hospital, so he couldn't... And he refused a blood test in hospital.
But was he prosecuted and did he get punished?
He had a 2.5-year ban.
Right.
They couldn't send him to prison because he wouldn't spend that much time in there. If they did send him to prison, because he had been given a flat, he would lose that flat. Yeah. And so he would.
So he got sort of off with a fairly light punishment. Kathy, terrible story. We're glad your husband's okay. But thank you for that. This is from Kev. It's the final one for the day. Who goes to a pharmacy to buy razors or a toothbrush? Well, who doesn't? He says, go to a supermarket. He says, plus whatever pharmacies sell won't be making enough profit to survive without a proper price for a prescription drug. Yeah, but most pharmacies sell all kinds of stuff. I don't know. Julie Hartley-Brewers here. Very good morning.
You're going to ask me where I buy razors now.
Should we have a bit of... no, I was going to play a bit of porn music. This is
okay, it's a different start to the day than I expected,
This is the music that's been put under a Keir Starmer video. Can you hear it?
No.
Can we turn it up for
play it so
Julian?
I can hear it?
Can we just play it?
Anything?
Like, she.
What porn are you watching out
This
of
is
interest?
1970s
I know,
porn
I'm
music.
thinking down.
No, it's 1970s. It's 1970s.
Have you come here to deliver pizza?
It's one of those, yeah. I've come to fix the cable. Why are they putting music underneath political, statements? What's going on?
Well, it's Muzak, isn't it?
It's awful.
It's even worse.
It's just
even
awful.
worse.
Anyway, it was a theme that we sort of developed through the show.
Yeah, I know. It just wasn't.
No reason.
Tuesday morning.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
not?
Pharmacies,
the sun's
right?
out.
The pharmacists of this country are apparently thinking of going on a work to rule,
Yeah.
right? Which tells you everything that's wrong with this
but
country.
they're not getting paid as much as they used to be paid to do their
They
services.
sell all sorts of things in a pharmacy, right? I mean, if I go to the supermarket, fine, I can buy the things from the pharmacy bit that I want to, but most of the time I don't want to go through the big supermarket.
We're talking about small independent pharmacies.
Yes, I'm talking about small independent pharmacies. They sell all manner of things, right? And so they make a profit from that, surely.
But they're not making. Well, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? If small pharmacies are closing down because they can't make a living,
right?
Then they need to be paid more by the government to provide those services. Otherwise, they won't provide those services.
They get paid more than by us.